I'd like to call our June 5th, 2025 Roanoke County School Board work session to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Greenway?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Linden?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnny?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Clements?
Yes, ma'am. All right. Mr. Linden, would you please read us into closed?
Well, I don't
Do we
have
have
that
the-
form in front of me.
I don't either.
Do we have it? I don't think we do.
What do we do? Are we going into
We
close?
do, just briefly. It won't take long, but we do
Okay.
need to.
I don't have anything.
I don't either. I don't think.
And I don't have.
We need the exact
copy
language,
of it.
or
We
else
need
we
a copy
can't
of the
go into
language.
closed. According to code
I know, you're gonna try to-
2.71A00-2.1.
Is she gonna print it for us?
All right, here we go. Thank you. Are we ready? Let's see. Motion that the Roanoke County School Board convene in closed session for the following: for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia.
Second?
Thank you, Susan. I get that. I didn't
Madam
think
Clerk?
about that.
Mr. Greenway?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Linden?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnny?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Clements?
Yes, ma'am. please read us out of closed?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia, and to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which this closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Madam Clerk?
We need a
Oh,
second.
sorry.
I'll second it.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Greenway,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Linden,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Shawnee,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Clemens,
Yes, ma'am. Item 2.03, action from closed session. We do not have any. Item 3.01, proposed sale of property at the corner of Bramilton and Ranch Crest.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nicely, we have with us this evening David Andrews, who is with the Shopping Center Group, and he represents the owner of the adjacent properties, and they would like to discuss the possible purchase of 2 small tracts of land that we own at Cave Spring Middle School.
Thanks, everyone. I'm David Andrews. I'm with the Shopping Center Group. I'm based out of Richmond. Our offices are around the southeast. We're based out of Atlanta. I do retail commercial brokerage. We represent retailers, restaurants, financial institutions looking for sites, along with property owners looking to develop their sites around Virginia and West Virginia. I cover that from our Richmond office. A little bit about me. I grew up in Cumberland County, west of Richmond on the James River. Was invited to be a walk-on at Virginia Tech. Fortunately made the team and enjoyed a Peach Bowl championship there, and first couple years under Coach Beamer. Nice. So that was a real highlight still today for me. There was no real estate program then. I'm fortunate to be on the Blackwood School of Real Estate Advisory Board now. So I got my real estate license at night down at New River Community College. And immediately after graduating, got into retail commercial real estate. So that's all we've done since that time in Blacksburg. I like to get back a lot. So this is really a discussion of the state of the state on this property and what we're trying to do. I wanted to orient everybody. I think we all know here where it is. It's a 1.39 acres in hard corner here, Bramilton and Ranch Crest. Let me get down to the exhibit here that shows. This is, our friends at Balzer created this exhibit. Our client owns the corner that's mostly the wooded parcel here with the heavy black line. There's 2 lots here that are shown there. I need my glasses, the 0.2 and the 1.8 lots that is currently owned by the school board. He acquired this property about 20 years ago. Richard Bishop is his name, local resident, and he was going to buy these 2 sites, ended up not doing it, assisted actually the school board at that time to buy these properties. It's kind of coming full circle here. This property, the next slide, we had Rebecca James at the county send us a letter about what is allowed here. The current zoning classification is commercial 1, low intensity commercial district. What that essentially allows is medical office buildings, banks, lower intense uses that don't have a drive-through, for example, in a restaurant or convenience store, which you'll see concept plan here next. We wanted to show you what fits currently. These are the uses. I don't want to bore you with running down these. This is here for you guys to read through that are allowed office uses. These uses down here that have the asterisk need, for example, special use permit. So that's why those are mentioned that way. These are setbacks and so forth that the county sent us. So I'll go to this slide first. So this, for example, is a quick service restaurant. This actually is a Zaxby's footprint. We've worked with these folks around the state to find sites. You can see that this footprint does fit on the site. entrances where VDOT, would push them back on the far corners of the site are shown. This can be graded down. There's about a 4-foot rise as you come up Brambleton here. It'd be graded out. That's been taken into account. The caveat on this drawing, for example, is that the drive-through use would not be allowed. Freestanding restaurant would be allowed, for example. The point I want to make here is see this corner that comes in here. This is where the school board's property comes down into this property. In order to grade the property, there's going to be some temporary easements needed. So one of the ideas you'll see here next slide, I'll show you this convenience store concept here. This would show how much you need to get into the school board properties in order to develop this convenience store. This is a current building down at Dixie Caverns. That's an Exxon, some folks may know, right off 81. That's developed there now. That is this exact footprint. Let me show you. So let me see. So did I send you that other slide that has the, yeah. So if you see, I don't know if I can zoom here. So what we did in this, if you notice these red lines, this shows squaring up the property, which buffers could be introduced. It does take into account a small portion of this parcel, but it would allow this corner to go away and the site to be used much more feasibly. This would leave the school board everything behind this red line, and there would be some type of buffer arrangement added in here. In this scenario, if you squared the property out, we thought that might be more attractive as a discussion point for adding buffers to the property. Let's go back to this. So I guess in summary for us, we wanted to just share this information with you now to start a discussion. If there'd be any consideration to sell the lots, if there'd be any consideration to support a higher intensive use, if there'd be any consideration to allow some grading on the corner and allow the property to be developed. It would be developed in the C1 use code as is allowed now. Nothing could be done, and the property would just be graded, and this slide here would be the most applicable here. The drive-through would come off because that's not allowed by a special use permit. If we did go for a special use permit, we would be coming to the school board and the surrounding. It'd be a public meeting held for comment on that. The other scenario would be to sell the school board the property as well. So that is an option. Any questions for me? I know that's a lot.
Are there any other proposed uses other than those two that you've shown us?
Those were just concept plans we used because we wanted just to create as examples.
So it could be something totally different.
Totally different. Yeah. Any of those by right uses, for example, or if we do need to come through the public process, we'd have to go through the more, we'd have the drive-through, for example. That would be a start of a public process we would go through to allow the drive-through, but not come onto the school board's property. It would only be a grading right where that corner comes in. A retaining wall would have to be built. Otherwise, if we got a temporary easement, we would clean up the school board's property, for example, in grading, and then leave it in a way that's a negotiated, shrubbery or trees or something if that was to be one scenario. You can see, for example, there's not room to put, you know, a couple of tenants like Jersey Mike's, AT&T, and a Starbucks. There's not enough room for that. This building here is about 3,300 square feet. When you get into the larger buildings of the convenience store layout, this building's about 6,000 square feet. So for example, we sometimes do these buildings, I'm just mentioning those tenants, that could be applicable here. That could be another scenario. We take away the fuel island, park it, and put a retail building there and do those type of tenants. You know, for example, the buildings you see in front of Tanglewood, something exactly like that. That could be another scenario.
So the two scenarios you provided, my first thought was is you're gonna have to go before the Board of Supervisors anyway if one of these type
You would.
occurrences would be issued. So as long as that's the case, I'm kind of okay with where we go. My only concern, I think, well, a couple things, and then I've got just a hokey question.
I like, can we go with that one first?
All right, so you're a part of I didn't catch the name, and we don't have it on here, I didn't catch the name or any of
David
that.
Andrews.
David Andrews.
David, I called Mr. Andrews, but
No, that's my dad.
you're not part of or done anything with Bruce Smith, have you?
No, that was after him.
Well, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't
We
have
were
been too
Peach
long,
Bowl
though.
team in the late 80s and then Beamer's first years.
So Beamer's first years, but he was 86. and
80,
Beamer was
86 Peach Bowl, 87, 88,
okay, and Bruce finished up 86.
85.
85, okay. Well, it was right there when I graduated too, so yeah. But anyway, I'm digressing. So I think my main concern for Cave Spring Middle would be the buffer area. You know, I think that would be of concern for the schools.
Well, that's completely open for discussion. I mean, there could be a very heavy buffer at that existing parking line now you see to the east or to the right. That could be something that we could have a landscape design team in collaboration with the board completely design something that would be acceptable to the board on that side as well as around to the sheriff's office side.
I think for me, and again, I go with Shelley because it's her area primarily, but if we sold those lots or we allowed the use or whatever we did with these lots, that would be my only thing I think you ought to condition would be to have the buffered space. Now, I'm not sure this wouldn't be for us. This is what I want the public to understand, is that if we agreed to move forward with these lots, we wouldn't be deciding if a Sheets goes in there, a Zaxby's,
Right.
a Jersey Mike's, whatever. You know, that wouldn't be our call. That would be the Board of Supervisors, and I'm sure they'd look after us
Correct.
for those in those respects. But for the schools, for me, I think that would be the only thing I would really add is that we make sure there's some conditioned part of the sale or usage or whatever the buffer, and we don't have to go in that now. But I
Right.
just because there's a lot of discussion, I'm sure.
The way we've done this in the past with other localities, we worked with Walmart in the past, and that I've gotten a lot of experience in this. We would have all the exhibits done before we even went under contract.
Right.
That are acceptable to the board.
Yeah. So for us, I guess all I'm saying is for us, if we want to move forward, I'm not sure if you're asking to buy them now, if that's conditioned on whether you
Well,
can do what you want to do. or-
I don't know the process of this entity selling property. I imagine it's probably an appraisal involved and.
Yeah, it's in appraisal and it's got to go through the board of
Public
supervisors, all
process.
that stuff.
Right.
But I didn't know if that's your intent, I guess is what I'm asking.
That's our first priority,
Okay.
yes,
Okay,
would be to buy the sites.
gotcha.
To purchase both.
Yes, ma'am.
And will something go on that corner regardless of the
Currently,
decision?
we have the C1 zoning. We can put, Lewis Gale Urgent Care there now.
Right.
We could put, pick a bank, a name bank, a credit union can go there. Those are by right uses.
But the intention is to put something there. Is that what
Correct.
I'm understanding? Regardless of what happens with those lots?
Correct.
The intention is that something will be on that corner.
That's correct. Yeah, the growth of the area, you all know better than I do. Yeah, it's a great corner, and we're gonna put it in use, we call it.
Is Mr. Bishop prepared to pay more than appraised value, I hope?
It would be an appraised value, I imagine. I don't know how that works with the board. I mean, we're,
Well, I know typically like on the Walmart subdivision down there near Clearbrook, the last holdout got the most amount of money. And if this is a parcel that allows him to do something that he couldn't necessarily do otherwise, it's probably more valuable than just the
Right.
appraised value.
yeah. There's an economic breaking point for every project. You know, I mean, and we know we probably have to go through a public process anyway, so it's gonna be transparent. You know, we wanna have that discussion.
David, to your point though, also, like you said, the economic breaking point, they can still put anything they want. I mean, not within reason, the C1.
Correct. The C1's
The
allowed,
C1, so
allowed uses.
whether or not we sell it or not, something's probably gonna
Right.
go there.
Right.
So
It will clean it up, and yeah, right now it's.
this gives you more freedom to do more.
That's
if
correct.
you
And
purchase.
work in
And work
partnership
together.
with the board to enact, buffer areas, more parking possibly. We could, see what Balzer can lay out.
See, for me,
Everything's
that's,
on the
that's
table.
the most important part is.
We're
what it
adding
does
value
for
here,
us.
What that
cleaning
looks
up the
like.
corner and,
Yeah.
yeah, in our opinion.
My concern is always safety, in terms of the traffic pattern, buses coming through, parents driving their kids to school. And then, of course, adding more traffic, a Sheetz versus a Zaxby's is going to be different, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
the
Chick-fil-A
safety
doesn't
of,
fit, guys, by the
I
way.
was gonna say,
Darn.
that should have been the
Yeah.
first.
Well,
option.
and I'm sure VDOT,
We tried.
but VDOT takes all that stuff into
VDOT would have to-
consideration. That's
yeah.
right, yeah.
so we should be fine with that.
So it's just
Yeah.
safety. And
They're adding a crosswalk here where, I don't, you all may know about this, Balzer explained, somewhere down near that Brambleton entrance for that church parking. They're adding a crosswalk.
Okay, well, I had requested that a long time ago. I heard they didn't have enough money for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
It sounds
that's
like
in
it's
play
happening
where
now.
we
It looks like it's
understood.
happening
It
now.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Breaking news.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. It was too much money for VDOT to take that
Okay.
on, but it needs to
It's
be
needed.
there.
See,
For
this is all the type of opportunity this provides.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
It's a growth opportunity.
So from this point, are we basically saying that we are willing to look at the option? Is that what we're saying at this point? We would look at what the appraisal looks like, and we're not saying no, right? So this is a jumping off point? Is that what we're saying?
Yep.
Yeah, it's exploration of, are you willing, or interested in pursuing this further?
I think so.
Because we can send an offer in on a letter of intent, on a letterhead or something to start the process. But I don't want, we don't want to offend anyone, everybody's got an opinion about real estate values. So, I mean, we can start that process. I don't know how you kick off the valuation process. That's a big question for
Todd can
me.
probably answer
Yeah,
that.
let's say Todd can probably answer what we would need to do.
Well, they're certainly welcome to send an offer to start it. I mean, that doesn't, we wouldn't sell it without getting an appraisal done on it. So obviously there's a cost to that. So there's, before we invest money on there, we want to know that they're serious about purchasing it.
I think our owner would be open to paying for an appraisal to share our thought on what it's valued at, and that's probably a great starting point. Because there's always, a couple appraisals and you average, or just different methods you do this. So at least it's not David Andrews, his number. It's, respected MAI appraiser here in the area that we attach our offer with their report.
And we have folks that we typically use that we trust to provide good valuations. So.
But I do like Mr. Andrews' approach because, what do we got to lose in getting their appraisal, and if they're willing to, if I understood you correctly, you're willing to pay for it. And,
Sure. I just spent some of his money, but yes.
He has
So-
plenty.
So anyway, I mean, I'm okay with that. I think it would be a fair. I mean, they've got ethics just like every other group. So they abide by, and I think we'd be okay with that.
Yeah. What I've learned over the years of these rezoning cases, I've been on PBS about, Walmart ruining a small town in Ashland, Virginia, all kinds of things. If we have a full discussion about this stuff and stay in communication, we're glad to work with you until that economic breaking point, and then let you know.
Yeah, and the key
And
for
drop
us-
back and develop it by right.
Yeah, the key for us is to know we can't decide what you do with it anyway. So you know, we're just looking at money that can come into the schools to do something. It is a valuable piece of property, I think, because it's attached to Cave Spring Middle. I don't want to lessen that, but I'm just saying, you know, this will go through the proper channels and the board of supervisors and planning commission and all that stuff. So,
Correct.
you know, that would be out of our hands. But I'm good to look at it.
One question on the red line that you had on there, it looked like it took into account some additional property that is not either of those two parcels.
I was gonna ask that, like the parking lot?
Yeah.
That kind of
yeah.
like tip
To
of the
squ-
parking
When you
lot?
said to square it off, are you also trying to look at that parcel to the right that adjoins that parking lot? To the right of what he currently owns? That triangle right down there?
He owns this.
Right.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about
Talking behind
this?
the-
I'm
Yes.
talking that, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yes,
little piece.
this does get into that. The property be replatted, correct, re-subdivided. Yeah, that would be part of the valuation. I don't have an acreage calculation, but you can see that's probably, you know, 0.05 maybe, just on a guess.
Which if there's a barrier, it still shouldn't present a
Yeah,
problem.
it should be the buffer area anyway. Yep.
And that would, yeah, correct, if you're getting into these designs. Yeah, see, it doesn't get back into here on either one of these designs. So that's gonna be your buffer area. A part of what would be constructed on this card corner property as well as the school board's property.
Do you
I
have
don't
any
have
other
any other
questions?
questions.
No.
Good to go.
Go Hokies.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Item 3.02, major construction project updates, Mr. Todd Kagels, Mr. Wes Mitchell, and Mr. Kamal Khalil.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we have with us as our usually monthly guest, Kamal Khalil, who's the project manager for Skanska at the two elementary schools, and Wes Mitchell, who is the project manager for Skanska up at RCCTC.
All right, good afternoon. Good to see everybody again. And I've seen several of y'all at the job site, so you've got a good idea of how much progress we've been making at CTE Burton Center, which is quite a bit. So over the last month, still mass grading going on, but it's getting very close to the finish line. That field is about done. If you go by there, you can kind of see the front parking lot really taking shape. We're at subgrade and probably 90% of it. So, and they've actually started laying storm structures at the edge of the parking lot as well. So over the last month, we've really been focused on that area. It's come up quite a bit, and also on the eastern parking lot that should be to the side of the building is where we still have some rock that we're crushing, the last bit that's remaining, and they should be done with that by the end of the month, barring any equipment breakdown. Those rock crushers they take a lot of beating, so sometimes they don't cooperate as much. And then also they started this week, if you've been down Peters Creek, they started in the median there. They've got to tie in a storm structure to an existing one in the median so that they can put in a turn lane from Peters Creek onto the property. So they're doing that, as well as they installed a few more utility poles. They're doing the transition so they can run it across the street, across Peters Creek for your VDOT controls, your stoplights and everything. So they've been working on that as well. Area D construction, steel is all done, including the steel decking. So the roofers are mobilizing this week, just getting material put up there so we can start with the roof. Over the past month, our MEP's been up there too, installing roof drains, and then any of the curbs that go all the way to the deck for our mechanical equipment that's up on the roof. So they've been doing that as well. And then inside the building, all our in-wall overhead roughing for MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades has been hot and heavy. And then they've actually started framing some walls in there this week as well. So it looks very much different on the inside than it did last month. Area A construction is ongoing as well. CMU bearing walls will be done by the end of the day tomorrow, barring any weather event that happens overnight. But they'll be good to set steel come Monday, and that's the plan. Our steel subcontractor's coming back to site with all the steel for Area A to start setting that, so we can get that under roof as well. And then also in A, going behind the masons is our in-wall MEP work, just as we did in Area D. Area B and C, over the last month, at the beginning of last month, we finished pouring out all our slabs on grade, and it's kind of been at a standstill since then. But that'll kick off again next week with CMU bearing walls in Area B, as the steel folks will kick out our masons from A into B. So we'll get back to work in that area next week. Just some pictures. So you can see here, that's the main mechanical room on the left. You can see all of our mechanical and piping going in. And then mechanical hangers on your right, so all your ductwork, piping, everything like that, that's what they're hanging on the right. This is Area A, our high walls, bearing walls where our steel will be placed. That's all set, less one wall on the other side here in the corner that they'll finish up tomorrow. Area on the right, that's Area D. You can see the cornice or parapet framing going in. And the canopy framing as well, which that's all wrapped up. All the inspections on the steel are done with the canopy. And then that big face wall that you see right there is actually already covered with our spray foam insulation. So it's all but ready to start receiving brick. And then here on the left, you can see it doesn't do it justice just how big that pad is, but that's Area B and C all poured out. So our last remaining slab on grade, we will have a slab on deck to pour for Area B, which is our two-story section of the building. On the right, that is our mock-up for the skin of the building, that stacked rock and then two different colors of brick. And then you can see the spray foam insulation and some blue skin to just show how that all ties in. And then those two panels on the bottom is going to be our metal paneling cladding as well. And this is the parking lot. I told you that fill has come up in the last month. You can see storm structures on the edge of it, so that's going to be your subgrade for the parking lot, the main parking lot at the front of the building. And then just some more storm structures on the right going up to that. That's all I have for CT. Anybody have any questions for that?
Hello, everyone. I don't know where to begin because school is out and there's no kids, there's no teachers. If you look, we started probably 3 more phases. And when we used to come in and before, we used to start with 1 phase and it was a big deal. Look at it now. Phase 2A, they're whatever's on the list and more. I try to condense it as much as I can just to give you an idea where they are. You name it, from demo of walls, ceilings, doors, windows. On Conduff, we had a visit from OSHA the other day, actually like 3 weeks ago, based on, branch asked them to show up just to be on the safe side. We didn't have any major issues, and they gave us recommendations on a couple of things. On phase 1B, we're cutting and capping like conduits for electrical, wire, water, just to make it safe for the guys to work in that area. It's like you're isolating one building from another. That's what we call it, cut and cap. We're dumping lights, for the guys to work in these areas. Again, demolition, just like up in the first item, walls, ceilings, light fixtures, you name it. Tile removal, even we started painting on some of these phases, and that's how fast it's going. In the cafeteria and kitchen and the admin, they're all like, plumbing work, sprinklers, drywall, hanging and patching and finishing. And like I said, I condensed it as much as I could, and I'll show you what I'm talking about when you see in the pictures. In-wall plumbing and electrical rough ends. Can I see the next page, please?
Yeah, and Kamal, before we go to the next one, just maybe the phases, just so everybody knows where those are. 1B is the exact opposite of what has already been turned over to us on the one end. So when you face those buildings, 1A was on the right on the second floor, 1B is on the left on the second floor. So that should be done before kids come back.
Correct.
1B, so we'll have both ends of the building turned over to us. And then 2A is back behind the library, and that section is also supposed to be done by the time kids
That's
come
correct.
back. Correct.
And to give you an idea, yesterday I had 101 guys on site at Condiv. I was telling Todd, and it's amazing. I mean, it's moving like a rocket, which is good. On
By December?
On Glen Cove, the same idea. There's no teachers, no kids, and then they're going at it like full blast. Phase 1A, you already guys know that we turned that in, and we had no issues. Probably a handful of punch list items that were taken care of. The 2A second floor, we're working on that, and underneath there's a cafeteria. We're working on that too, like upstairs and downstairs. That was not a thing before that we couldn't do it because the schools was in. Temp lighting, the demo all over the place. If you go in there, you'll see what I'm talking about. The DOAS, I'll show you in the pictures. These are like dedicated outdoors air systems. They're huge. They put them on the roof. We had to use a crane to do it. The framing and ceiling, the tiles, ceiling tiles. The 3A cafeteria and the 3B kitchen, right now we're just doing the ceiling demo. All this, like the one you see, it's gonna be gone. Retaining, like today is Thursday, right? I did this maybe on Monday or Tuesday, and today they started cold milling the asphalt in Condiv, and it's all done. Wow. So it's amazing. It's an amazing process. On this side, if you drive by, like now when you're leaving, you'll see, the contractors working in the parking lot, and they're gonna start doing it maybe in the next 2 days or so. You'll see the difference. So it's an amazing work, and it's going fast. This is at Condiv. I mean, look at this. The asphalt is done, the curb and gutter. Look at the concrete on the edges. Look at the slope, how it's seated with the grass. You can see the grass. Look at the roof. You can see all three roofs. Like the one closer, this is the kitchen area. The one next to it is the dining area and the corridor. And then the one that's all the way down, it's the admin. I hope that helps. But that's on the roof. This is like a week ago. I mean, you look at the massive work.
Really came a long way.
And now, see, they started on Monday. I put that on Monday, the cold milling where they take the asphalt out, and now the whole parking lot is done. The brickwork is all around now. It's almost done. And that's when they unloaded those DOAS, the HVAC systems. They're set, but they're not connected yet. So we'll probably be doing that next week or so. This is some electrical work, like inside the hallways. Just to give you an idea, that's the retaining wall. It started, but we were waiting on some material for that. The admin area on the right, You could see the work. I mean, it's an amazing work. What do you guys think?
Looks awesome.
Amazing.
It's going so fast that I can't explain. I can't. It's every day it changes. Every day.
I do have one question that
Yes.
somebody asked me the other day. This is not really related to the construction of it, but it's about the dirt. Are we gonna have to get rid of dirt at Cundiff?
Yes.
I've had somebody ask me, they, said they needed about 100 to 150 loads. I'm like,
I'll give you my card, and then they
Okay.
can contact me, and we can.
well, I'm gonna let, yeah, I
You know,
just-
or have them call branch, or they can contact me.
No, if you'll give me the card, that's great. you know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We did the same thing here. One of the teachers wanted some dirt,
Okay.
and he got a trailer and got a couple
Yeah,
of loads.
they said they had the, they had the truck and would take, but I just didn't know if we needed to get rid of any or not.
Some of it's gonna go, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Good.
Thank you. You gotta come out and see it.
Item 3.03, discussion of minor and major capital project request. Mr. Todd Kegels.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so these projects have been on our minor capital request list for many months. This was back before we ran into some budget issues, and those things have since been resolved. So it's time to circle back around and take a look at the projects that are on that list, and then decide how we want to move forward with these. All of these have been presented before, with the exception of a few that were added just over the last few days. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of each one, and then if you have any questions, I'm prepared to answer those. The first one is at Bonsack Elementary. We had a request that actually came from the school to replace the carpet in the guidance area, conference room, computer lab, resource lab, library, music, the office complex. It's about 6,600 square feet. That was a school request, and we've set a budget for that one of about $50,000. Maybe we should pause at each one and ask if there are any questions before we move to the next.
My only question with those, and I think I've already asked you this, is these were gonna be summer items. Can we still do these in the summer?
Well, logistically, so there's a couple of things. One is the things that we had designated as summer projects, we really would have started 2 months ago. We would have, ordered materials, we would have already gone through procurement, we would have been ready to start as soon as school got out. So there's that. We don't know what the availability of the contractors is at this point, and what the lead time is on materials. So, if it takes 4 weeks to get the carpet that we need, might put us up against the start of school getting it done. So the short answer is I don't know. We would certainly do everything in our power to get it done as soon as possible, but whether we could do that before school opens or not, I just don't know without without having time to get with our contractors. Now, the other possibility is, how much disruption are the schools willing to put up with? If they're willing to, give us a few weeks at the beginning where we're working in the offices to get the carpet in there, maybe you could still do it now. If not, you're looking at, Christmas break or sometime when we have a long break to get it in.
I don't know what Bonsack, what areas do, I'm sure it says it over here, guys, conference rooms, whatever, but I know at Horn they were more concerned with the library and being
Right.
able to vacate it in the summer and then, take everything out and then take everything back in.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of stuff to move in the library, so. Okay, so we don't have any questions on Bonsack. Herman L. Horn, similar request. There's some worn carpet, been down for a long, long time. That would be the music room, the library. It's about 2,100 square feet. It was a school request to have that done. There's a $20,000 budget set for that one. Northside High School, they had some science classrooms, and now they have the Family and Consumer Sciences and Nutrition classes in those rooms. So those are typically rooms with stoves and sinks and shelves and dishwashers and things of that nature that are set up for that program. Northside is making it work with less than ideal setup in classrooms that were originally designed for science. So you got a $50,000 budget on this one that would allow us to go in and remove all of the unneeded sinks, reconfigure the countertops, the cabinetry, and really make it make it ideal for the family and consumer science classes that are in there now. Any questions on that one? That was a school request to do that.
On the first two, not to go back, you say instructional impact, no, is that if they were done during the summertime when originally planned?
No, that's not meant to say during the construction process. That's meant to say, does the carpet currently keep us from being able to teach class? Is it having an instructional impact on the school?
Okay, so not a day-to-day operation.
No, sir. Let's see, Hidden Valley Middle School. This one is actually the only request that originated with us, with the operations department. As you know, Hidden Valley's getting up there in age, and the hallways are very poorly lit. It also has a 1-by-1 ceiling tile that we can't get or repair anymore. So now when we have issues like a leak or whatever it is, we actually have to go over and try to paint it, which just looks terrible. So in order to improve the lighting and get a ceiling that we can actually repair and continue to work on, and then we would also go and replace they have sinks and countertops that are in public spaces, the way that school is laid out. And we would go in and replace all of those. They're all very old, in poor condition, and they look bad. Now that's a big area we're talking about. It would, I think, dramatically improve the way that school looks when you're inside. It's $300,000 is the budget for that one.
And you said that was an operations request. You guys had flagged that.
Yes, we originated that request.
Do you think that, when is Hidden Valley on the list to get redone? I can't remember. It's a good
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Out at least.
Yeah, so I looked at that as like, if it was 250,000 instead of 300, which I thought it was, $2,500 or $3,000 a year investment, really. But the school's not going to get done in 10 years. It kind of needs to get done.
I agree. We originated that one, so
Yeah.
I agree with you. Northside Middle School, we've talked about this one before. They have a room downstairs. It was an old locker room that's not really used as a locker room anymore. It has lockers that go right down the middle of the floor, so it makes it very difficult to use that space for anything other than a locker room. And those lockers are built up on concrete pedestals. So in order for them to convert this to a wrestling room, which is what they want to do with it, we would have to go in, cut up the floors, demo all the concrete, remove all the metal lockers, and then go back and patch the floors. So that's a $50,000 budget to convert that old locker room to a wrestling room, and that was a school request. The elementary media centers, there was a request from a board member to provide $2,500 to Mount Pleasant. That would provide some minor improvements to the library/media center. What they do with that would be at the discretion of the staff there at the school. And again, that was a member request, so do we have any questions on that one? At Fort Lewis, we installed a new cooling tower, I think that was last summer, and the new tower was higher than the old tower. And if you've been out to Fort Lewis, it actually sits in the parking lot right in front of the school. And it doesn't look very good because the tower's sticking up above the brick walls that were originally designed to hide the tower. So we set a $25,000 budget to go in there and extend those walls with, it wouldn't be brick because there's some structural issues with those walls, but we would put something around the top, probably a drive-it type material that we would frame in and extend those walls up, make it look good, and hide that cooling tower that sits right in front of the parking lot or right in front of the school in the parking lot. And that was actually a school request. Any questions on that? Northside High School, it says renovate the building at the softball fields. Now, we have since already actually repaired the roof out there. It was leaking, so we didn't have a choice. We had to do that through maintenance, and we did some paint work on the outside of that building as well. So the only thing left is to really go in and we needed a little bit of work in the snack bar in there, but definitely the restrooms need to be modernized. Their condition is poor. It's used frequently by the public. It gets lots of rec club use. It gets lots of school use. So currently, in my opinion, it's not a very good representation of what we like to do in Roanoke County. So we'd like to have a $40,000 budget to be able to go in and fix up those restrooms. And that was a school request. Questions on that one? At William Byrd Middle School, there was a board member request to convert the grass field right behind the middle school into a softball field. That would probably cost about $250,000. The school doesn't have a softball field on campus. The high school has one. The middle school does not. They currently go down the road to the park and have practice down there. So obviously there's some safety issues whenever you can't keep your teams on campus. So the request is for a $250,000 budget to go in, regrade that whole area, probably put in irrigation and fencing, and turn it into a softball field. Any questions on that one? The next one is Cave Spring Middle School. This started as a school request. We're requesting a $300,000 budget. This is another softball field. The existing softball field there is in poor condition. It isn't graded properly, and because of that, they have a lot of water that drains across the infield and constantly washes out the infield, creates ruts. You really can't, without going in each year and redoing the infield, you really can't play. Can't play there safely. So if we want to continue to use that field, it's going to require essentially a complete reconstruction there. Now, I will say that the budget on this one is our best guess for right now until we have engineered plans for that field, which obviously incurs a cost, so we couldn't proceed with those until we had the budget to do it. So we can't be certain of what the budget would be. I mean, that's based on past projects. We feel like that's a pretty good number. But just so you know, we need the engineered plans before we can move forward with the definite cost. But if we're going to use that field, it does need to be done. Now, there is one other challenge out there. There's a utility pole right in the middle of where we would like to move the outfield. That could be very expensive to move that. We haven't started examining that, but that you could regrade it right exactly where it is and just leave it alone. If you could move the utility pole, you could get significant improvements in the amount of space that you have back behind home plate and perhaps get some spectator area in there as well. So, again, we'll have to look at all that through the engineering. Any questions on that? Cave Spring High School, they've requested, this was a school request, they have requested risers. We just priced this right off of what we recently provided to William Byrd High School. William Byrd High School, we did that as part of their renovation. They did not do that during the renovation of Cave Spring High School, and so they share with the middle school. If you've ever tried to move choir risers around, they are very heavy and difficult to move, and right now they're moving those back and forth between the two schools. So that was a school request to provide exactly what we provided to William Byrd High School last year. Any questions on that? The next one is Hidden Valley High School. This was a board member request to install steps at the tennis courts. Those tennis courts, if you're familiar with them, they have access to a small parking lot on one side of the courts. The problem is that when that lot is full, which frequently happens because they play on the same days as the baseball team, which is on the adjacent property right there, people park in an upper parking lot, and in order to get to that lot, people will take the shortest route, and the shortest route is to try to walk up this rather steep grass hill versus walking down and then walking up the paved, and then back up the paved path. I understand, although I've not been there during games, I understand that you have vehicles typically parked on both sides of that paved path, and that you have traffic on there as well. So the thought is that there is not a safe path to the upper parking lot from the tennis courts. So $40,000 budget would put in a set of concrete steps to connect the roadway down to the tennis courts. Any questions on that one? Another one at Hidden Valley High School is to rebuild and repave the tennis courts. This was a board member request as well. We set the budget at about $350,000. We based that on past projects at tennis courts and price escalations. It is worth noting that about $120,000 was spent to renovate those courts in 2021 during that school year. That's when the project was started. I don't think it was finished until the following year, but that is when it was started. I think the chief complaint there is that the refurbishment that was done didn't create certainly it's a less than ideal service. It's a fabric overlay, and then you paint the fabric. The fabric's made out of like a fiberglass type material, but the fabric doesn't set perfectly flat onto the asphalt underneath, and so when you bounce a ball on it, for instance, it has to compress the fabric first and then get down to the asphalt before it bounces back. So it creates a lower bounce and a fast surface to play on. So the request there is $350,000 to completely rebuild those. That would have to be, you're talking grade work, taking out all the old asphalt, fixing the sub base, and then rebuilding the tennis courts.
Can I expand on that, Todd?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think you got a letter from a couple of the other coaches. The real issue is the safety aspect, not in terms of the playability, but there's a structural problem. I don't know what the circumstances were, I should say, when they were all redone years ago, 5 years ago. So it should not be time to redo these courts. However, it was never done properly. And so the poles that hold the fencing were originally coming up. So the idea was, okay, we got to pull out the fencing, redo the courts, resurface it. The court, after 18 years of being there, had 2-inch cracks. And so what they did was they couldn't fill the cracks to make it playable. So they said, we're going to put on this kind of fabric glue surface and seam it all together. But it created air pockets underneath it. And now there's the poles that they replaced are coming up. I mean, only 4 years later. So the job was never done properly, and I don't know what their financial circumstances were at the time why they decided to do this, but from the beginning it was never done right, and it's just getting worse. So now there's rips in the fabric of this poly fabric that they put over it and they glued on top, and so now you're getting water under the actual playing surface, which is creating more issues. So I sent pictures to Todd, and I'd be happy to share them with you guys, but it's not good at all. I mean, this is a big problem that they're having. So it's about the safety, the maintenance, and it was never done right. So I don't know what the issue is, Todd, and you and I have been trying to get to the bottom of why it was done this way. But the company that did it initially should have been held accountable, and they should have been brought back within 1 year when all these issues started to pop up again. And at this point, the warranty is passed, and I don't think they'd even would do anything about it. But this surface should never been put down on these tennis courts. So,
Any other questions?
Do you think it's repairable in its current condition?
no, it needs a new structure. Like, we need to have someone
was
come in to
asking
look
Todd,
at it.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
The problem with any sort of repair to that surface is that it would require removing the fabric. And the issue is that the underlying asphalt is not completely flat. That's why you have the air gaps, but that's also not part of what was warranted because we didn't replace the asphalt. So just like when we did the rubber track out at Cave Spring recently, they will only warrant their surface if you also install a new subsurface, and we didn't do that on those tennis courts. We just had the cracks fixed and then had them lay that over there. And when I say we, that was all done prior to me being here. So I don't know the rationale of why that was done. I don't. The courts look very good when they're clean, and we did clean half of them last year. We could possibly clean the other half this summer. I understand, obviously, they don't play as the way we would like for them to play, but they do look good. So when you go over and look at them, with the exception of some cracking around the edges, they actually look like they're in really good condition. It's just a matter of how they play.
There's dead spots all over because of how they laid the surface. And in addition, the poles are literally coming up now. I sent you, like, the poles that hold the fencing have now erupted from the surface and is cracked.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
if the
gonna last
question is,
long.
could we fix the fence? Yeah, we could fix the fence. I mean, we could go and take that fence down, put up a fence that
But you
actually
can't
isn't
pound
in
the poles back in though, right? Can
Well,
you?
we would dig them up, and we would,
Oh.
we'd take it completely down and completely rebuild the fence. Now, there is a grade issue over on the side that appears to be, that hillside appears to be completely just built on fill. And it does appear that there may have been some settling in the back corner of one of the courts, and there actually is a slope to it back there. It is not to the point where, in my opinion, it is unsafe or anything like that, but there's a definite slope to it. I mean, they're not completely flat, which I understand actually may be the case from some of our other tennis courts, like out at Bird. I've heard that there's a slope to those courts as well. So, but I haven't seen that myself. So, I don't know. Any other questions on the Hidden Valley tennis courts? We think we could rebuild them for $350,000 or so. Out at Northside High School, there's a request to replace the stadium lights. That was a board member request, but also a school request. They went kind of through their board member, but Ms. Green, I believe, initiated that request. And I think it is worth reminding the board that we replaced the stadium lights out at Bird used the contingency from their construction project to replace the stadium lights. And Northside, so we actually conducted a lighting study, and Bird's was the worst, and Northside's was just slightly better. They were the next worst in the county, and only slightly better than Bird at the time. So that was never. It was never asked that we replace them, so we didn't didn't proceed going on up the list. It was Northside, and then it was Glenver, then it was Cave Spring, and
I thought Mr. Linden said that was a waste of money.
No,
Huh?
no,
Oh, you didn't say that?
no,
Oh, okay.
I don't recall saying that. Oh, wait, over at Bird?
Well, exactly. Yeah, it was a waste over there. But
No, I was concerned that we were spending money that we didn't know if we were gonna be able to
now we've got plenty.
pay.
Well, that's okay.
Well, we
That's
ended
good.
up-
I'm just checking.
well, there's a
1.6
definite difference.
million
If you
over
go up
budget. I was
to,
concerned about us using money that we still needed for that project.
Sure. Now it's okay. Yeah, I'm good. Go
and
on.
so there's a definite difference. If you go out to Bird now and look at what the games look like under those lights, and you go out to Northside and look at
Actually
what
see the
it
end
looks
zones.
like under those. I'm sorry.
You can actually see the end zone.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you have like very similar to what we had at Bird. You have that at Northside now. So
The foot candles at Bird are 50, you said?
50.
And at Northside?
I think it was 16. I'd have to refer back to the study again, but I'm pretty sure it was in the 16 range. Any other questions about the stadium lights at Northside? Let's see. Also a request at Northside High School, the main and auxiliary gym floors. So these are the gym floors that are actually in the Northside High School building, not the Pope Gym or over at the middle school. $350,000 to replace the hardwood floors in both. I was able, this is a late ad, but I was able to get in touch with the fellow who maintains our hardwood floors. He refinishes them each summer and does repairs for us and that kind of thing. And he did confirm that the auxiliary gym for sure is so thin, he says, that you can see the concrete in different places underneath it, and that he believes the main gym, he wasn't prepared to commit to that statement, but he believes the main gym is in that, is very close in that situation. as well. So they're past the point where they can be sanded and refinished and made to look new again. So the school initiated a request to replace the floors in both gyms. Any questions on that one?
Just to clarify, that's not the game gym, that's the two schools at the high school, like you said.
That's right, except I think the middle school uses the main gym in Northside High School, not the Pope gym. I think they use it for their games. And it's used a lot by Parks and Rec as well. But yeah,
Depends what
the high
sport
school
you're
plays
talking
at
about.
Pope.
It is the game gym for volleyball.
Volleyball.
That's correct.
And gyms are a absolute premium. I mean, there's just not enough for all the sports.
Any questions about that? Hidden Valley High School, this was a school request. They asked to keep their current bleachers that are in their main gym, but what they would actually do is remove the front row of seats, and that would become an aisle, and then there would be a rail that would be added to the end of the bleachers, so that rather than just being able to come straight out of the bleachers and onto the floor, you would have to come down, walk across the aisle, and then exit out. And their rationale for that is that, they just feel it's a safety issue that people can just walk right out onto the courts during games. And this would at least provide some barrier between the players and the fans. We did price this out. We actually already have bids to do this. This is about $36,000 to have the company who usually maintains our bleachers for us come in and do those modifications. Any questions on that one? I'll just add that sort of system is already in place at Cave Spring High School. It's not in place anywhere else. But I did call the other schools, and none of the other schools wanted that. So Hidden Valley seemed to be the only one, asking for that. And then our last one is Hidden Valley High School. This was actually a school request. This is fairly inexpensive in terms of our budget. It's $8,000. That would install a French drain between the softball infield and the sidewalk. So the way that one's laid out, there's a sidewalk that goes between a building and the softball field. And, here again, we have some grade issues where when it rains hard, the water washes across the infield and then washes mud onto the sidewalk. It seems like a minor thing, but when you get a couple of inches of mud in that area, the sidewalks become unusable. That's where the restrooms are. It is a significant issue that can be mitigated for relatively little budget. So those all told, about $2.2 million, $2,245,500. There's currently available in minor capital $1.62 million. And so I think we've reached the point where the board has to, make some decisions on how we go from here.
You don't start those discussions?
Well, I just did for the last 30 minutes.
That's a handoff.
Todd and
He's telling you he's done. Now it's up to us.
Yeah. So if my math is correct, and it's very generic, so I didn't tie it back in or anything, we're looking at about 736 Windsor Hills, 272.5 at Benton, District 840 for Northside, 324 for Cave, and Glenver comes in at a paltry 25. So just for something to go by, I guess. And just for clarification, one other thing, I know we don't have this, I don't think we have this right. What's the next school, Northside Middle?
Mm-hmm.
And
On the
then-
current CIP?
Yeah.
It is. I think that's some discussion that we're gonna have to maybe circle back around to. And the reason I say that is because just some needs at Burlington specifically, there might be some future discussion about maybe switching those two, but we haven't brought that to you as a
Well,
suggestion
I'm just
yet.
trying to figure out which schools are there. So it's Northside Burlington, or is it Northside Burlington, Hidden Valley, something like that.
Glenver Elementary.
Glenver Elementary is in there somewhere. With some,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Before we had discussions further on the minor capital, it might be a good idea to take a look at the major capital, since Mr. Greenway's tracking what we're spending. across the county. So major capital differs from minor capital because these projects, and I'll explain why, even though this doesn't match what I'm getting ready to say, I'll explain why. Typically, these projects are over $500,000. Now, you see there's two on here that are $450,000, but because these are part of the renovations that are already ongoing, that's why they sort of fall into the major capital category. So there was a request, a board member request to take the soccer field at Hidden Valley High School, and which is currently a cool season fescue blend grass field, and put down artificial turfs. Hidden Valley and Cave Spring are the only two high schools that share one artificial turf field currently. I know there were some complaints about the field out at Hidden Valley. I did go out and assess that myself. I don't necessarily agree in terms of what the condition of that field is. Now, I do agree that you can't, artificial turf fields, once you put them down, you just play on them all day long, every day, in the rain. You don't paint them. There is no doubt that there's a benefit to having an artificial turf field, and certainly for each high school to have access to their, and I don't want to say their own, because I think it's important to note that this does not mean that Hidden Valley would not be playing football, for instance, in Bogle Stadium. They certainly would still do that, because you have a small set of bleachers at Hidden Valley High School, but you don't have a stadium, so you wouldn't be able to play football there. But you could play all of your soccer games, all of your lacrosse games, perhaps middle school football would play there. There's, I think, there's a good use case for having an artificial turf field in that location. So we would set the budget for that project at about $1 million. I did prepare just a graphic to show how that field is used. Cave Spring High School has about 46% of the use on it. Cave Spring Middle has about 21. Hidden Valley has about 26, and Parks and Rec uses it about 7% of the time. Now that's just taking their calendar and calculating what percentage of the dates, the reservations that are on there. But for example, Parks and Rec, they could have one reservation, but they may have 5 games on a Saturday. So, the numbers don't necessarily reflect the number of events. That's just the reservations that are on their calendar, which was the data that I had access to. Over on the left here, I just prepared a list of how many open dates there were. That's a date that didn't have anything on the field by month at Bogle. And you can see there's not very many months other than June. Of course, school's out, and you have the dead periods and that sort of thing that have any dates where there's not something scheduled in that stadium. So, and then over on the right, we have just a number of, that's where the percentages came from. I also have,
Todd, I know the distances between the middle school and the high school there is rather large than typical. Where does Hidden Valley Middle play? Do they have their own field at the middle school?
They do. They have a grass field right at the right there on campus. We actually built that field when I was coaching over there, many years ago. The problem with that field is it has no seating. So there's a hillside where you kind of stand back. It's pretty far off the field, but you do have a field right there on campus where they play their games.
So would they possibly transition to that field?
I think they certainly could. I mean, that's something that would have to be discussed with the two schools. But I would say size-wise, it's kind of ideal for a middle school football game. And certainly I would think if, you're only talking middle school's 4 home games a year. So, I mean, I would guess that middle school could come over there and play their home games if that's what they wanted to do.
Soccer, same thing.
Certainly could.
Like Mr. Cagle said, it would come down to do they want to do that. Just speaking from as being a former principal there, there's a convenience factor, in being on your own campus, but they could do it.
Games, not practices, obviously.
Right.
So currently on the field at Hidden Valley, do JV and varsity soccer both play on that field, and are we talking about boys and girls? Like what's being used right now?
You're talking about the existing grass soccer
Yes.
field at Hidden Valley High School.
I just wanted to know how they use it right now.
JV and varsity, boys and girls soccer,
Okay.
and band in the fall. So the band practices
practice
there
field.
every day. Yeah,
But JV and varsity are actually playing games on this field. They're not just practicing on this field. Is that
that's
what you're saying?
correct.
Okay.
They have all their practices there, and I'm going to say all of their games. They play an occasional game in the stadium at Cave Spring, like playoff game, for instance. Something that might have a bigger crowd, or maybe it rained and you can't play there at Hidden Valley after it's rained. So they may have relocated a few, but 95% of their soccer is on that field.
And all lacrosse would be played at Bogle.
All lacrosse is currently played at Bogle. I would suppose that if the school wanted to, they would now play, if you put an artificial turf field in there, they would play all of their lacrosse there on campus.
Okay.
Well, that's a lot of usage, so I'm assuming that eats the grass up. mean,
Yes, but it's actually in pretty good shape in terms of the cool season grass that's there. The difference between that one and, for instance, the fields over at Berg, which are actually in sort of rough shape right now, is that they don't have PE. You don't have high school PE playing out there all day long every day like you have on the Bermuda fields over there at Berg. And so you really only have the soccer teams playing there for a couple of hours. And when I said all of those teams that practice, they actually just take half the field and practice at the same time. So in terms of the number of hours of use that it gets, it's really in pretty decent shape for a cool season grass field. But you still have all the
Well, and I'm assuming there is an expense there to maintain it,
Oh, absolutely.
because you're going to have to seed it, fertilize it, water it.
Paint it. We actually delivered equipment over there today for Mr. Weaver to go and aerate the whole thing and reseed the whole thing. And yeah, so obviously you have those expenses.
I walked that field earlier this week, and Mr. Weaver has done an incredible job between the top dressing and the aerating and the overseeding that he's done. I mean, it's in very good shape. And my nephew played soccer there this year. I asked him to rate the 5 grass fields that they played on, and Hidden Valley, he said, was the best. Botetourt second, Cave Spring third, Franklin County fourth, and Stanton River fifth, in that order. So, I mean, it seems to me like it is a natural grass field, but it really is in good shape.
Yeah, they have done a lot of work. I mean, he's worked
he's
every
worked hard.
spring and fall to reseed. And again, that's it is expensive to do that, but he has been doing that over the last 3 years.
So if I could just make a couple comments, and maybe it'll help you out, David, a little bit. So I should acknowledge definitely Scott Weaver, because he has put in a tremendous amount of work to maintain and upgrade that surface, because it was really in just horrible repair after COVID. But in addition to Scott, GE Turf, who's a friend of mine's company, he dumped in free thousands of dollars worth of product, did a soil analysis, everything to get that field to where it's at. That said, with all those efforts and hard work, the challenges are still there. It's just really difficult, if not impossible, to fully solve issues that natural grass brings, right? The maintenance, as Brent brought up, but this past soccer season, there were multiple players that experienced several injuries that were non-contact injuries, non-contact. That was directly related to inconsistencies in the playing surface. So you might have the grass or a clump of grass, but there's other things underneath there, to my understanding. Now, I'm not a soccer player, but this is what the calls that I've gotten. So, and it's not a reflection of poor maintenance, on my AD's behalf, but really a limitation of what the school budget can do, as any school can do when maintaining grass. So when it rains, practices, have no choice but to go inside. And we just had a lot of rain. And so when you're playing a surface that requires grass and now you're indoors, it just really hurts the athletes and their preparation. A turf would provide a consistent and safe surface, and it can be used virtually in any weather. So all those games that got postponed because of the weather, they could have still played them in the rain, and they couldn't, and they had to get rescheduled. So it increases the training. There's more game opportunities. Of course, it eases the scheduling issues that we have right now at Bogle, and it provides a reliable playing surface. Just have a couple more things that somebody had sent to me. I didn't realize this when this issue was brought to me when I first was elected to the board, is that Pulaski is the only division that's even close to us that has a cool grass surface. They're the only ones that have cool grass. And Hidden Valley. So Byrd has turf, Salem has turf, PH has turf, Fleming has turf, Christiansburg has turf, Blacksburg has turf, and David, now you have turf, which you didn't really want initially, but we almost had to give it to you. There's a few remaining schools that do have Bermuda, Cave, LB, and Franklin County. And there was a discussion, should we convert this field to Bermuda? But it really doesn't look good, and it takes a while because of the playing season and how it works for it to get to where it needs to be. So my understanding is that the grass field slows down play in, like early in the season. The grass has to be higher. I don't know if that's right or not, Todd, but you can't cut it as much in the cooler season, and it's harder to manage. And that the field does improve later, which is probably what David's seeing now, but soccer season's over. And opponents will come to Hidden Valley and comment on the quality of our field. I don't know about now in June, but you know, months ago when we're just getting started, and the overall perception of our athletic program kind of looks pretty crappy when everybody else, is playing on a consistent, nice, high quality surface from day one, and we don't have that. So is it Valley? I don't know. Is it Virginia United Travel Soccer Club? They've expressed interest to rent out the field if we went ahead and did this, and during the winter months, because there is a need in my community and all of our communities for turf fields. So it would generate some revenue, and it would support not only Hidden Valley but other athletic programs, because you're bringing in revenue. From a safety and perspective campus, this is really, really, really nice that we don't have to transport kids over to Bogle to play. I like to keep our kids on campus. I think it's a lot safer. Most importantly, it would be a point of pride for Hidden Valley because they just don't have a home field. It would give our student athletes a true home field that reflects their hard work and the school's commitment to providing top quality opportunities. I know it's a complex issue, and grass fields can certainly be effective, but there is a significant struggle to maintain that grass field, and Scott has put in an incredible amount of work, and he's done everything that he can with what he's been given, and he's succeeded, and I'm so grateful for that. But at the end of the day, a high quality grass surface year round that's consistently safe and playable is not going to hold a candle to turf, which would really be more reliable and the sustainable choice for our athletic programs here in Roanoke County. So I'm gonna ask Madam Chair if you would consider putting this on as an action item during our next regular school board meeting, so that we can just take a vote on it.
As part of that conversation, we should finish the major capital list, I think, just so everybody knows where we are, money-wise. So that leaves, there's about $1.9 million. We need about $1 million budget to do the artificial turf over there, same that we had when we did Northside. And that assumes that there hasn't been significant price escalation since then. So that leaves about $900,000 in major capital. And what I would suggest is that we put $450,000 in each of the elementary school contingency funds. If you recall, that budget was pretty small from the beginning. I think about 190. If you average the two, it was about $190,000 as a contingency. We always knew that was extremely small, and I just wanted you to see where we are now. There's about $30,000 each in the two contingencies. Just a reminder that we have about a year to go, and this is where it's gone. So far, we've spent about $31,000 on asbestos monitoring. That's not abatement, that's monitoring, third-party monitoring that we do to ensure that no asbestos is released into the buildings. It's not required, but we did it at Byrd, and we're doing it at the two elementary schools also. It's a safety situation. We have kids in the building, so And then the basement at both schools contained, they actually have a dirt floor basement in both of those schools. And because there was work that had to take place in there, MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing work that had to take place in there, there was some mold in the dirt that had to be remediated. That was about $23,000. Framing and covering damaged walls. Those were walls that were originally scheduled to just be left in place and painted, but removing the asbestos that was on them, so that the chalkboards and cork boards and things like that had been put up when the school were constructed were put up with a mastic that contained asbestos. So you had to remove that, and removing that damages the walls. So you can paint over the damage and leave it, which, you know, is not what we would want to be consistent with the $30 million renovation, or you can fur it out and cover it with drywall, which is what we did. That was $46,000 to do the two areas that you've already heard, 1A and 1B. The furniture was about $249,000 over budget. That's the two schools total, and then there was the Verkada camera upgrade. And if you're sharp, you notice that the numbers don't seem to add up, and the numbers don't add up because a lot of that was paid for by the tax savings. We do the owner direct purchase program where the subs buy the materials through us, and then we don't have to pay tax on them, but that wasn't accounted for in the original budget. So we actually save about 5% of whatever materials our subs buy. So a lot of these things were covered by the savings that we had there. So my recommendation is that to protect us from unforeseen circumstances is that we put $450,000 into each school's contingency. And then, of course, if we don't use it, don't need it, it would go back into major capital about this time next year, in August of next year when we finish.
And you've already went through that with Ms. Peterson?
Yes, yes, sir.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yep.
Do you think that's enough?
I do. We're holding to the budget. The thing that really has killed us is the furniture was so far over what we originally thought. Part of that is, you know, what the schools wanted. If you took that out, we'd actually still have some of that, you know, a comfortable cushion with the original contingency. And now that that's all accounted for, yeah, I do feel good about where we are with the 450. I honestly don't think we're going to use a significant portion of the 450, but fiscal conservative. You got to have, you know, you keep the cushion. If you can, you keep the cushion, and if you don't use it, it comes right back. So. So that's all I have. Do we have any questions or any discussion on the minor capital projects? Anything, you need anything from me?
Any questions?
Great job, Todd.
Todd's a lot of work. I don't know how you do it.
It'll be a lot of work if you approve the minor capital projects.
So I would ask one quick thing. For like these carpet at Bonsack, and I don't know what they need, but you've got it in here, and the carpet at Horn, and that media center, it would be nice to get that done over the summer. They're very small in nature of what we've got in there. I'd like to give Todd the clearance to go ahead and at least, because he's gonna have to procure the carpet, I assume, and work on the items. How would we have to do that? Or could we?
Yeah, you'll need to,
Could we-
you know, just take action on it. I mean, there's some preliminary, you know, work that he can go ahead and do as far as getting prices and so forth, but you would need to approve it, which you could do at the regular meeting.
So we could go ahead and put those, if everybody's okay with it, put them on, I mean, I guess we need to really go through all this, I guess, right?
Right, I mean, anything on the list will have to get your approval because we're spending out of the minor capital. So
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you want to tackle the,
But you're asking about those particular
Those
items to
small
go ahead
ones,
and
yeah,
start
just
them
because
this
they're
way.
summer items. Would anybody, I mean, can we clear those out of the way real quick before we start talking, I guess?
I do just want to make sure they were summer items. When we could have approved
Well, no, they may not be,
months ago.
right.
man's a deal
right.
maker.
That's
We'll
why
do
I'm
our
saying,
best.
that.
Now you
But if
see
we
that.
don't do it
What
today,
he's got
there's
going on?
absolutely no chance.
Let me get mine out of the way, then we'll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
And
see
probably not a great chance that they could be finished.
right, they may still not be able to,
Probably not unless the schools are willing to deal with disruption at the start.
so the start of school. Yeah, I don't know, have you ever talked to Bonsai?
Occasionally. I mean, we've had so many of these requests that have been overlooked in the past or just been brought up, but we didn't have money for. I think it would be helpful if we go through this list and
All right, we'll keep Bonsai out. Could we do, I mean, you could do it out. Let's go.
I think in the
We can't
past
do them all.
we've kind of done that offline amongst each other and tried to come to agreements and not in an open meeting going through 25 different projects line by line. So that'd probably be my recommendation is we take a look at it, talk amongst each other, and
I'm
try to
fine.
figure out what's best.
I mean, we're gonna have to because, I mean, he's got it right here. We're over what we have. So it's not like we can just go through and say we're approving the whole list because we're over. We don't have the money to do it all. So at some point, we're gonna have to come to some sort of decision. So,
Could we turn him loose on 22,500?
Can we turn him loose for 25,000 for Fort Lewis?
No, 47.5.
Right.
Deal,
How about 300,000
deal.
for the tennis
we have
courts
no
that were
deal.
never
I
Gotta
properly
get
fixed.
783.
Gotta get something out of this
Structure.
deal, man.
Yeah.
Show.
No deal.
$783,000 for Northside. While we're at it, to Mr. Greenway's
I know,
point
so this is-
earlier,
that's
it
why I'm
may
saying
be,
this is why we're gonna go down a
it
slippery
may be
slope
helpful
here.
if we knew how much was spent in that Vinton district last year, or the previous couple of years.
Yeah,
He's
that-
I would
quick
like to get to
note that-
dinner at some point today.
I do have a thought about that I'd like to share is, some schools are aging differently than others. And so I don't think you can really go and say, well, this school got X amount of dollars and this school got X. They're all Roanoke County schools. I brought this up in the past. And so for us to say, well, it's this dollar amount, I think that's why Todd did a good job of trying to prioritize them for us. And, the truth is, there are some schools we know that they all weren't built and maintained at the same time. They're all kind of at a different level. So,
Well, I wish you'd have been around about, 3 or 4 years ago. Holy cow.
yeah,
I could
yeah,
have used you.
yeah. Well,
Lyndon's trying to get, no, go ahead. Let's keep going.
we're able to do things as they come up, and I think that's the most important thing is prioritizing. So I'm happy to come back and talk to each other independently and see what agreements we can come together as a board to do the best for Roanoke County.
So that we know that 1.6 million needs to last us how long?
That would be a question for Ms. Peterson.
November?
Probably through January.
It gets longer every year.
Well, with
Because we're creating
the
her.
audit, the audit's not completed until November, and then after that, in terms of getting it actually in there, so that's what she's talking about.
But we have set ourselves up nicely with these buckets of money in terms of if anything
Absolutely.
happens and,
Especially compared to a lot of other places.
yeah, you want to talk
Well,
about
and
it.
if you walk around, obviously there's a lot of things on this list, but if you walk around all of our schools in every district, I feel like every board member has done a good job at trying to keep everything looking nice. And
That's right.
prioritizing education obviously first, and our staff, because that's a direct reflection that the kids are gonna feel, so. Just want to clarify that for
So I
our
guess we're not
I think
getting,
what we're
news over
saying is
there.
we're not.
Our news over
we're not
there.
getting anything
We're not
done.
gonna.
No, we're gonna-
That is a good conclusion there, Mr. Greenway.
So we're just out for the summer. You
We're
can
gonna-
waste this summer.
I think there might be some boxing coming out from boxing clubs.
Can we do it on your new turf?
Do it, yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. He's like, can I get out of here?
I know.
Well, just
He's
The
not
hot
done yet.
seat.
to clarify, in terms of the June 17th meeting, are any of these items going on for?
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, I think we're gonna have to come to some sort of, are you back?
I forgot I have
The
one more.
fleet.
What about the major?
I mean, I think that what Ms. Fashani's asking for is that we put that on as an action item.
Yeah, I know I don't have it for consent because I'm pretty sure David's gonna say no.
I just want to make sure that I know how to set up the.
Then I think that's
the
okay for
agenda,
us to
so.
do that. I just think this other list is obviously much larger and longer, and we're over the budget, and so we're gonna have to do some discussion over that. I don't think that, I mean, is that a fair statement that we're not ready to make a decision? Because we would have to make some decisions based on the numbers here, and I don't know that we're prepared to do that right now.
So we gotta do some backdoor politics.
So the request to use the major capital for the turf field and the two requests to put the contingency for the elementaries, we'll put that on an action item.
Yes.
So I'm here.
I think
Okay.
that's,
Thank you.
that's what we would have to do here.
Then for the remainder out of the minor, we're gonna have to come to a consensus.
Right, and I just
And
don't
then
think we can
maybe
do
put that-
realistically right now.
Yeah,
I
put
mean,
that as soon as we can.
Right. I just don't think it's
together.
realistic to go through all these items right now.
Do you need to vote on all these individual items?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
we will make
So
a
if you came up with
decision
something,
amongst
could
each
you?
other, and she will
Minor
present it.
capital's only
to
been on
Ken,
there
and-
about 7 or 8 months.
Doesn't really have to be voted on if it's at a minor, right?
You do.
You
have,
do?
We need to approve anything on the list that you want to
Okay.
do.
But you could,
But you don't, to your question, you don't have to do it individually.
That's
You
what
can
I'm
say we're going to
thinking.
do these 10
Yes.
or
Okay.
whatever.
I'm
So
good
we
with
just need to kind of get to that
yeah,
point.
I agree.
All right. Are we ready to move forward? Okay.
Absolutely.
Item 3.04, faster fleet management Roanoke County MOU discussion. Mr. Todd Capers.
Yes, ma'am. So the full text of the MOU with Roanoke County is uploaded to board docs, so that the board could review it if you would like to do that. Here's the short version. We use Faster is the name of the fleet management software that we use. It manages all of our parts, service schedules, the costs associated with each vehicle, things like that. Roanoke County uses the same software. They use the online version. We use a local version. That version is not going to be supported anymore come August. So we really only have two choices. We can go on our own with Faster and do our own contract with them, or we can partner with Roanoke County and tag on with them essentially and share some of the hosting services, which will save us a significant amount of money. So the MOU just details that scenario. So again, two choices. Either way, you have to upgrade it. One costs us more to do it ourselves. The other, we can partner with Roanoke County, go in with them, and save a significant amount of money. It won't require any additional funding. The upgrade from the board that'll come out of the transportation budget. So it does require board approval because there's a board signature required on there. Any questions about the upgrade?
So does that go on consent then if we're?
If that's okay.
Yeah.
That would be the
Couple of quick
request.
questions. I noticed on the MOU, we're splitting the cost 50%. How many vehicles do we have as compared to how many vehicles do they have? I mean, when I think of, we obviously have school buses and a number of vehicles, but they have police, fire rescue, sheriff's vehicles, county vehicles. I mean, is there a significant number of difference?
I don't know the answer to
Does
that. I
Peterson
don't know
have
how
time to
many
contribute?
vehicles they have.
So this is the first that I'm really getting into this particular sharing of services. I will let you know that we do split 50-50, the Dynamics licensures and the Global HR licensures. So they host those two products for us, and we do split them 50-50 regardless of the number of licensures.
And this is the same setup. They would
And it will
host
be the
it.
same- I
and
guess the same
we would
setup.
pay out, yeah. For us, to me, just from a sort of pragmatic standpoint, we have to do it, and we can either do it on our own and pay more, or we can partner with Roanoke County and pay less. So,
Consensus on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay.
thank you.
Item 3.05, request to surplus William Byrd High School pre-2020 boys soccer uniforms and appropriate funds to the school for the boys soccer program. Mr. Travis Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nicely. I'm here because the William Byrd High School boys soccer coach requests to sell some old soccer uniforms, also some warm-up items as well as a fundraiser. The fundraiser would run obviously through the school books, not through any booster club. Since these uniforms are considered property of Roanoke County Public Schools, it must be disposed of following policy 4.16 and admin reg 4.16AR, which states that those normally go to minor capital projects fund. However, we're requesting an exception to that policy to allow the proceeds to stay at the school for the use for the soccer, boys soccer program. If the board agrees, I request that this would be put on consent agenda for the June 17th meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe I
Thank
should
you.
have got you to bring forward the carpet.
I was thinking we probably should have put him first, so he
I
didn't
know, he
listen
didn't
to all
I
that.
know it, so he
what I
had
was
to sit there and listen. No kidding.
If he weren't leaving us.
Sorry, yeah, that's right. That's why we did that.
Thank you, Travis.
That's your last punishment.
Stick around, Travis.
That's your penalty for leaving.
He's like, no, I'm done.
Got dinner.
He was gonna watch the meeting later anyway.
Item 3.06, request to accept Blue Eagle donation, appropriate funds to the McKinney-Vento program, Miss Susan Peterson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, and I hope to be just as quick. We have received a $160 check from Blue Eagle Credit Union through their Make a Difference Monday philanthropic program. They did designate these to be used for the McKinney-Vento program. As you know, anytime we have a donation or a grant that is not already budgeted to use those funds, we bring them to your attention and request your acceptance of the money and then appropriate it from the correct accounts and the expenditures. And so if it is your desire, we can go ahead and roll this over to consent at the next meeting for your approval.
Works for me.
Sounds good.
Great,
Thank
thanks.
you. Item 3.07, K through 2 standards-based grading updates for 2025-2026. Mr. Ben Williams.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, as with all things good in this world, this has nothing to do with money. And everything I'm about to tell you is free and good. So, all right, so standards-based grading is the focus. Let's kind of think about K2, our little bitties. And we started this year in a pilot working with the first year of standards-based grading changes that we had. You guys were made aware of that a year or so ago. And, we've basically been trying to feel out teachers, find out what's working and what's not working. And so we put together a committee of teachers based on, some feedback that we had gotten, and said, okay, well, now that you've started your process in terms of standards-based grading, of making some of these changes, what needs to be tweaked? And so we get together 5 kindergarten teachers, 4 first grade teachers, 6 second grade teachers from all over the county, 3 reading coaches, all the elementary ITRTs, some folks up here, only 3 folks up here, and really let them loose on it in terms of, what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to change, what do we need to tweak. And we really need the help of this group because there's something about working with, especially K1 students, that is just fundamentally different than all the other grades. People sometimes have a hard time visualizing those little ones, because when we talk about the K1 and to an extent second, we're talking about students, many of whom have not fully started reading yet. So when we talk about grading and assessing students, we're not talking about the tests that you think about. We're not talking about multiple choice tests. They can't read the multiple choice tests. We're talking about assessments that often are informal. We're talking about assessments that are also often verbal. that are sometimes more diagnostic assessments, things that don't look and feel like the tests that you think about. And because of that, we have to be very careful when we're making policy for those grades, that we don't make policies that are great for the upper grades, but don't work for those particular kids. So the goals for the committee were to identify appropriate assessments for the tricky indicators that we have. How do I assess fluency? That's not a multiple choice test. We have to have, real diagnostic instruments to do that. What's appropriate spelling for a first grader versus a second grader? What does that look like? And we needed to improve our inter-rater reliability because for decades, not for a year or two, basically since the inception of Roanoke County, when we talk about, what does fluency look like? What does spelling look like? It's essentially made up by the teachers over the course of decades. It's not consistent across the division, and each building should be consistent. There should be what I call what the world calls inter-rater reliability across grade levels, so that we have a common idea of what should be assessed, how it should be assessed, and what proficiency is from school to school to school. And that's what these folks came together and worked on, and they were phenomenal. They really enjoyed this. This was one of the hardest working committees I've ever seen. They also wanted to put together a lot of resources for teachers to save work for them, to make their lives easier, so that they could create these assessments. They use them as common assessments throughout the county, and that creates inter-rater reliability. It allows for teachers not to have to come up with their own assessments for every single thing, and allows for better quality. So all of that was going on, and these folks worked for a couple days straight. And these are some of the recommendations they came up with. Wanted to just make you aware of this. This isn't necessarily something that it goes into policy or anything like that. But they did recommend that when you're looking at the standards-based report card in K2, which isn't an A to F report card, they recommended that we call it a progress report, because that's what happens in K1 and 2. We're reporting progress. And that progress is sort of growth. It's not like we're saying, this is a B, this is C work, this is D work. We're saying this is where they've gotten to this point. And so they recommend that, that progress report to promote a growth mindset there. They updated some of the report card indicators to match the new reading standards, but also their own preferences, and mostly added additional ones, so that on the report card there's more detail to parents about what they essentially would be, what they should look at. Which anytime you can give more detail to parents, it gets more actionable. It helps parents be able to figure out what is it I need to work with the child. So on math, instead of saying the student will add, subtract, multiply, and divide, they break that up and say the student will add, the student will subtract, the student will multiply, the student will divide. And then as a parent, you know where the issue is. Whereas if you said the student will add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you don't know which one's the problem, if there's a problem. So they broke up some of those indicators, added some additional ones. And one of the other things that they did, and this makes a lot of sense, is they asked to remove an averaged final grade. When you do standards-based grading, essentially you're assessing them as they go, and you're growing. These kids are growing a lot from 9 weeks to 9 weeks. And does it make a lot of sense to average where you were in first 9 weeks with where you ended up in the fourth 9 weeks? Where you ended up in the fourth 9 weeks is the important information. It's the growth there. And so you wouldn't necessarily, it actually hurts kids to come on a standards-based report card anyway. It hurts kids when you try to average those together, because in the end, your final ends up being the average of where you were, not where you ended up. And so, it's just, it makes more sense to take that final grade totally off, because averaging a standards-based report card just doesn't work. The other thing that they've mentioned is just focusing only on summative assessments for grading indicators, meaning that all that classwork that they do, that's the practice work. And, you want to give a kid the opportunity to, struggle a little bit, before you get to an assessment. But in the end, it's the assessment that matters, not all of the classwork, the busy work, all that stuff. And keep in mind, we're talking about the little ones. This is, this is work that, very often is sometimes being done independently, and some of them need additional help for that. In terms of the scale, they rather than put everything on a 100-point, they recommend using basically what a lot of folks refer to as a Marzano scale, where we're saying it's proficient, approaching, not yet. That's the report card scale that we currently have. And what they were to say is that if I'm using a diagnostic, for this diagnostic, let's create the equivalency so that this score on a diagnostic is proficient, this score is approaching, this score is not yet. And if I'm using a rubric, that, I link it to those things rather than to a percentage out of 100, because when you're using a percentage out of 100 with some of the early diagnostics, it doesn't always work correctly. And so that's the kind of thing that in upper grades, that doesn't really, it doesn't make sense to do. In lower grades, where you might give a diagnostic that only is, 5 items, 7 items, or you might be using, a nationally normed instrument for fluency. And if you're using a nationally normed instrument for fluency, it's not built to be used 0 through 100. And, it might be, built totally differently. So, so that, your norm might be 50%. So you don't want to plug in 50 and hurt a kid with a grade of 50 when, in fact, a 50 would be good. So there's all of these things in terms of conversion that it's best to convert it to the report card standard. I know I'm getting kind of technical, but that's, there was a lot of work that went into that, a lot of discussion, hours of discussion on this alone. In terms of the practice grades I mentioned, we would enter those for parents so they could see what work the kids are doing, but they would be unweighted. Yes, sure.
So when you're talking about this progress report and you're talking about the skills, breaking them up between, like your example with math, right, addition, subtraction, are you saying that parents would see this number beside each of those skills?
They wouldn't see the number, they'd actually see the name, the name itself. Their current report card is that way already. Okay. But each, for example, when they send home work, they're having to convert it to, they may be converting it to a percentage out of 100, but then they've got to put it in the report card and convert that back into the scale. There's a lot of conversion and reconversion. And so what they'd like to do is, just make this the core conversion onto the scale. So essentially, if they were giving, any activity, it would be really consistent for parents that it would come back saying either proficient, approaching, not assessed, but it would be based on common predetermined indicators. It would be based on common predetermined bands, so that we knew that students work at Burlington, and students work at Cundiff, and students work at Cave Spring would all be assessed sort of on the same level. The main thing we're trying to do here is allow teachers to use lots of different types of instruments without having to, convert, reconvert, and do a lot of sort of silly averaging and having to convert to a 0 through 100 scale that then reconverts into this scale.
I'm trying to understand what would be on like their progress report themselves. Like what are parents going to see? I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
Let me show you. So the progress report itself really has not changed from this year, and we haven't I haven't heard any negatives so far. Let me go to my report cards. Give me one sec.
Madam Chair, will I speak while he's scrolling? Ben, do you think we're softening things up a little bit here? I mean, I understand what you're saying and you're trying to keep people motivated, but I also feel like, that we're kind of softening things up.
I think we're doing the opposite.
I mean, some people are going to be motivated by, oh, he's doing well or she's doing well, my kid's doing well, but at some point there's going to be a stop break, right? Like where now you have a regular report card and you thought your kid was doing well because they're getting a toned down version of what.
But keep in mind, K2 already has a report card like that.
Well, I guess that's also my
And
question.
has for
I thought
years.
it was just K1. I thought 2 was getting grades.
No. This year, 2 does not have grades.
So that's new, because that's not the way it was.
It was something that we decided last year, brought to the board. So yeah, that was, the decision was made to. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the right report card. Decision was made to stop at 2nd and go with grades at 3. Here's why I think that it's tougher. Really, what happens is from school to school, the idea of proficiency can change from teacher to teacher to teacher. And if we set proficiency, particularly in reading, we're setting it against the state standards. We're setting particularly the standards created by the new Vols assessment. The new Vols assessment tells us, a proficiency for a lot of the report card indicators. And if we tie it to the state, then that's tied again to this difficulty of the SOLs. It's tied to the difficulty of the future tests that they're going to take. And it's not making our bar lower than the state. And the other thing, too, it's making sure that Cundiff's bar is the same as the bar in Southwest County, the same as the bar in North County, et cetera. It's making sure all of our students have those high standards. Because right now, I can't say that. Our standards are totally random from teacher to teacher to teacher. And we've done a lot of work in improving that in the higher grades. And it's time to really try to fix some of the inconsistencies at the lower grades. And I think teaching under the standard is one of those things that can really cause some problems later on for kids. But this would actually be holding kids to the standard so that they're not going to get to the proficient level unless they're actually at what the state considers proficient. Now, and that's another important piece. If you let's say you took 2nd grade, 2 or 3 years ago, if you took 2nd grade and looked at the number of A's, almost everybody would have had it. It was like A's across the board. Whether they did well, whether they didn't do well, whether, later on you end up failing the SOL.
Let me stop you right there because I just got a question.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to keep going and I'm going to forget. So I know we're talking about K through 2, correct?
Mm-hmm. K2.
So I know they're younger, and refresh my mind because mine are older now and I don't really recall everything. But I mean, we are grading these kids on something, correct? I mean, I'm not just sitting here in the classroom teaching the kid and say, well, I think, she gets a B and I think she gets an A or proficient or not proficient. Mm-hmm. We actually have some sort of graded materials, correct?
Absolutely. So what we've got is we've got materials that we've looked at ahead of time that we've created, made sure they're valid and reliable, that we've looked at and said, okay, these materials, this is what proficient is. This is the band for proficient. This is how it links to the Virginia standards and all that. All of the rigor that goes with the standards, they would say this is the proficient level. And so if that's a 20 question test, we'll say it's X number out of 20. Okay, and that's what they have to get proficient. And there'll be another number for the approaching proficiency as the bar there. And so all of those bars are preset on these diagnostic instruments, on these tests. And so when they take these tests or are given these tests in many cases, because remember a lot of them can't read yet, when they're given those tests, the teacher doesn't just sit there and just make it up. Say, oh, you're doing okay, you're doing great. which frankly is some of what, you know, has happened in the past. They're saying, oh, well, according to, you know, where we've set the bar on this, this is where you fell. And so it's much more objective.
So then why would there be inconsistencies between different schools? If we're using graded materials to come up with a grade, how could we have
So right now,
inconsistencies?
those materials are all created by the individual teacher.
So we're not
And
using a
there's no
standardized-
standard. There's no standard for. That's one of the things the committee was fixing. Was the committee was actually working on consistent materials with consistent levels. That was one of the biggest parts of the committee and what they came up with. I think that's really a powerful piece. You know, one of the things that I really want is, you know, I want, you know, the bar to be set at a consistent level and for students to be held to that bar. Now, we do it in a very kind way, of course, and you know, we have to be, you know, understand that these, you know, some of these are kindergarten students, but in the end, we have to report to parents the truth. And if we're going to report to parents the truth, we have to identify what is proficient, and it has to be consistent across the division. And that's why this is higher, because right now, I can't tell you from one teacher to another where the bar is until I put these things in place. And two, I also, you know, can't say that we're holding them to that proficient level, and that proficient level is linked to anything. Whereas when we put the parts under this in place, that's what we'll be doing. And so, you know, if you went to a traditional A to F system and the teachers simply, you know, created their own assessments, we'd be in the same boat where you run into a situation where folks just are essentially, every teacher is the arbiter of what's proficient. And if we're going to be providing the truth to parents about where their kids are, rather than just saying, hey, your kid's got an A or what have you, then that's where we have to be. For example, on a standard space report card, which, like I said, in K1 has been with us for decades, or not decades, well, over a decade, but K2 started last year. You get this you know, proficient, approaching proficiency, not yet, on each of the you know, the indicators here. But look at how many indicators you have. So instead of reading A, B, C, D, you've got reading, orally identifies, produces manipulated sounds, phonetic principles, decodable text fluency. The point of the matter is, the parent gets a lot more detailed information about what the student can and cannot do. And that information, with the additional resources that this committee created, will be far more consistent, and it will be, essentially, there'll be a bar in place to ensure that it's sort of consistent with state understanding, consistent with where the standards are, so that we're able to provide the most accurate information to parents that we can. Like I said, that's why I think, you know, we're not watering down. We're giving parents more information and better information.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think you're giving them a lot of information on really specific skills. I do have a couple of questions. One would be, are these students, I know they're young, but are they being held accountable for doing the work? I mean, it sounds like we're talking about the summative, but there is something to be said for completing the work, right? So that's part of it. And and the other question I would just ask is, I guess, why the change for second graders? I mean, like I said, I know in the past we always had just K1, and second graders got grades, and then by the time they're in third grade, they're doing SOLs. So I guess my question is, why the change for our second graders in terms of not getting grades?
So firstly, that change it's a year old, but that change was put in place because we really wanted to go all the way to fifth at one point. I think you see most of the research in education in terms of assessment says that a report card like this that gives more information to parents, provides really detailed information, not only helps parents be a better part of the process, but also helps with a more of a goal and growth mindset with the students, where they know, okay, well, this is what I need to work on, rather than just getting a random A, B, C, D. In fact, when you start talking about A, B, C's, D's, and those sort of things, kids start to get an idea that I'm a C student, I'm a B student, I'm a D student. The research actually says that by the time they get into, say, middle school, their conception of what kind of student they are is so rigid that you could change the difficulty of the work that they get, and the kid will tailor how hard they work to what they believe they are: an A student, a B student, a C student. And so when you break away from some of that, what you're also doing is saying, it's not about you getting a grade. The grade isn't the final piece here. The important thing is the learning, that you get to proficient in these things, and that you know the things that you're strong in, things you're not strong in, and that we can use that information not only to help you, the student, but the parent also has something that they can go off of, that puts them at least in charge of the learning, and not only in charge of, but also it gives them something to go on when they feel helpless, when they feel like, I need to work with my child and I don't know what to work with them on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and then how are you using all of that information then to determine what you're recommending for that student going forward for the next year?
Okay.
How does that work?
Yeah. So what you're looking at, if you had if you look at the proficient, approaching proficiency, not yet proficient, if you had not yet proficients in the fourth 9 weeks, meaning you haven't made the end of year progress, and all of a sudden I've got a report card where I've got not yet proficient at the end, and you can probably see that throughout. Those are hard conversations that we have to have, and the parent isn't surprised either. The parent's not getting good grades, and all of a sudden you're getting talked to about retention. The parent's not surprised. They know the student's not proficient, and they then also very early on have the option. Okay, I'm going to get I'm going to look into additional tutoring. I'm going to talk to my teacher about this. I'm going to have better and more conversations with the teacher about what needs to happen for my kid. That's really the goal of this sort of system.
Well, what happens if you're not proficient in one of those categories? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to use this to then assess overall where the student goes next, because they could be proficient in reading maybe, but not in the math category. So I'm just trying to understand how you're
using it. I think that's a fair question in terms of retention. So retention isn't made solely on any one instrument. What we have to really look at here is we have to bring all the people together. If we're looking at a potential retention situation where we're saying an elementary student needs to be held back, what we're doing is we're bringing the parent, we're bringing the teachers, we're bringing the principals, we're bringing all of these people together, and we're looking not just at this data, but we're looking at our standardized testing data. We're looking at if there's SOL data involved, we're looking at that. And then we're going to take the preponderance of data and say, and not only that, we're also going to look at the age of the student. We're going to look at some developmental, their developmental progress. And when we take all of those things together, that's when, as a team, we decide what's best to do. Whether they're going to go on to the next one, next grade level. So I don't want to say it's not a situation where if you get an F, you're held back. The current report card doesn't work like that. The current report card, the current way we do it, deals with a group coming together to have that conversation. Because again, if you go back to the research on retention, after a certain point, it's better to do tutoring sometimes than it is to hold them back. Essentially, you don't want a kid in sixth grade who's driving himself to sixth grade. There are times where we do have to decide what's in the best interest of everybody. But anyway, I mean, it is especially kindergarten. The best, if we are going to hold a student back, it's usually best to hold them back around kindergarten, because it gives them the extra time to develop and get the, some of their basic skills done. But the chances of, once we start holding kids in like upper elementary, and this wouldn't be upper elementary, but once we start holding them back, then you're looking at, the chances of them graduating going down tremendously.
Well, I would also assume that you're, like, you've got summer school recommended. I would assume that that could be something that you're doing. If it is, you're talking about one category, is that what you would be doing?
So the summer school recommended, that would be if we've got a lot of areas that are, if one, we're not retaining them, we're not having the discussion about retention, and two, it's the end of the year and we're looking at a lot of not yet proficients, then yeah, we would click that summer school recommended and we'd try to get that kid signed up for summer school. But you know what? That box really doesn't have to be there, because we would have already had the contact with the parent. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if we need that box, but it is at least it's a good record of what we think should have happened. So if a parent doesn't send the student to summer school, we've got, we felt like they should have gone.
Oh, go ahead. You got one.
Honestly, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, and I don't mean to be, argumentative or contradictory, but, and I don't guess that really it's that big a deal, but I mean, as a parent, I'm looking at my child's report card. They got an A, B, C. Well, obviously I can pick for myself where the lack of proficiency is, right? If he's got an A in math, but he's got a C in reading, and then he's got a C and I can't read all that, but, phonics, sounding out or whatever. Well, I'm going to know where the lack of proficiency is. So I guess what I'm getting at is we're softening up the terminology is what we're doing. Because we're not giving them an A, B, C. We don't want the child to feel like, oh, I'm a C student, or we don't want to upset the parent by giving them a C. I mean, is that where we're at?
But you're saying you would still have the categories, but you're saying it should still be grades.
So first off, they've been using this for a little while, but the actual terminology itself isn't made. It's made to be more descriptive. It's not made to soften anything. I don't want to soften anything.
Well, I'm not saying we're softening the education piece. What I'm saying is are we softening the blow to the parent that your child? I mean, to me, would I rather see, he's not really proficient yet, or he's got an F?
I think we're giving.
But I don't know how we're giving them.
So I understand what you're saying here. So
I'm just trying to avoid you get to like third grade and now we got a problem because, well, why didn't you tell me this in second grade and first grade, right?
Well, if we told you they weren't yet proficient,
and now all of a sudden they have an F,
then not proficient and F is pretty much similar. Now, where I'll push back is this. I pulled it many years ago, but many years ago, it would be about 70% of the kids in elementary school had A's all the way through, all the way across. There weren't 70% of kids necessarily that were at the superior level, okay? But they were getting A's. So by putting in a system like this, essentially what we're doing is trying to, one, be more descriptive, but also I think this corrects some of those issues. And this group that came together is even trying to further correct it in making sure that we have a solid line in Roanoke County for what is and isn't proficient. So that when we give this to parents, the teachers aren't making it up. If they're counting backward by ones, which by the way is a standard, I guess that's for future problems they may have. I don't know. But count backward by. Sorry, we make quips about counting backwards by one. But anyway, if the point of the matter is, in the past, they would get an A, B, C for the whole 9 weeks, but I wouldn't know if for that 9 weeks it's counting, it's comparing, or comparing greatest to least, it's understanding basic fractions. I wouldn't be able to tease that out necessarily unless I went through all the student work, which does come home in Wednesday, Tuesday folders. But a lot of parents, especially the parents who struggle, aren't parents that always have time to go through all that work. And, but they can refer back to the report card and see where is it that the student needs help.
I mean, I would not argue that. I mean, I think this is something that is very helpful for parents to be able to see these individual skills, and they're obviously there for each grade level for a reason. I don't know that that's what the argument maybe is. I mean, I think all this is more information that I got when my kids were in those younger grade levels, but I do think what the argument is about not giving them a letter grade when we know this is where they're headed at some point, right? I mean, like I said, when they get to third grade, they're going to get grades. Well, really, it was unbeknownst to me that they weren't getting them in second. I thought they were still getting them in second. But in third grade is when all of those things happen, right? That's when they start taking the SOLs. This is kind of when the rubber meets the road. So, I mean, I felt like for my own, I mean, I can only speak for my own children, but in second grade, I felt like they kind of got a little dose of reality, right? Like this is where you're starting to get grades and you're kind of being held accountable for this. And then third grade is when they started taking on those SOLs and things like that. So it kind of felt like a little slower transition instead of kind of dumping them in there into third grade. I mean, I guess that's my own personal take on it. And I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I just feel like I understand this piece, and I think this is a good piece. I think that maybe what the point is being made is that I don't know if softening is the word, but I feel like, I mean, really what we're looking for is...
So is like the indicators themselves,
Right.
Is the indicator proficient or is an indicator not yet proficient understandable by the parent that that's the equivalent of an F, essentially?
Right, like I agree with
At
what
some
she's
point,
saying.
you're converting the numbers in your head, right?
Right, like, because if you've got 5 or 6 different standards there for reading, however that many is, that's great because you are putting the responsibility to the parent, saying, "Hey, this is where you need to work," right? So the parent can't come back and say, "Well, you didn't tell me that he was having a hard time with this part of reading," right? So I definitely agree with that. What Ms. Clemens is saying is exactly what I'm saying. Is not putting a letter grade on it, to me, may confuse some parents, or when you do get to third grade, and that's when you might wind up with a problem.
So, I think that, we could certainly, talk behind the scenes and, sort of confer offline and, see what we can do about making the board more comfortable there.
So can I
Yeah, go ahead.
jump? So I do like the conversation you're having. The grade is good, but I love the level of detail in this. I think it does give
It's
the
very
parent
helpful.
a lot more information than traditional cards or quarterly
So,
assessments.
yeah, going back to the committee, so the committee, already had this in play.
Let me finish
Go ahead.
just this part, and because when you go back to the committee, maybe answering part of what. So you said setting the bar. You talked about a lot of this being off the bar. Did that committee or the committee of teachers that we just talked about, are they the ones that are setting this bar? You see what I'm saying? Because you said they're gonna make these determinations of proficiency off the bar.
So
Where did the bar come
The
from?
level of proficiency and the level of detail we're talking about is pretty extreme because of all the different indicators. But they have essentially different bars for almost every indicator. Most of the time, the bars, like for math and social studies and all that, are related to more of a traditional grading system. So if you're basically about an 85 or above, you'd probably be at the proficient level. If you're 70 to 84, approaching proficiency, below that, not yet proficient. It's actually a tougher bar than the 10-point system is sort of kind of where they're coming from. But
who sets?
Basically the teacher groups themselves are aligning the bar either to a percentage system, which is more appropriate in the math.
But how do we get consistency on that? That's what I guess I'm saying.
Okay, so they have every teacher would get a and this is what they've worked on. Every teacher would get a document that would say these are, and it's really cool. They put together a SharePoint site that has, let's say, a folder for math 2, second grade math, And in the second grade math folder, I've got all the second grade math common assessments, and I've got all the second grade math, all the tests, and all of the retests too, if they want to give retests. And on top of that, they have another document that says for every test, this is what you have to get on that test to be proficient. This is what you have to get to be approaching proficient. And so that all the teachers using those common assessments are all using the same essential same bar.
Okay.
Um,
And so, but your idea to the other's point, my first thought was, are you gonna raise this a grade every couple of years? Because I agree with the others that at some point reality needs to set it. Even if we used it, I like the metric of what you've got here, but I think we do need to let the parent, which this is a great information, I think, but we need to say, there is a grade attached. This is a B, this is a D, this is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
we heard,
so if
we
we're
heard
going
from the
into
board
third,
when we.
I hope we're not
we,
stretching it, I guess.
We heard from the board last year when we made this change, going to K2. We heard from the board that, and it was probably before that, probably a year before that, because we're in the work. It was all in the works. We heard from the board to stop at third. Is basically the information I got. So, so at the time, it's not. There is no plan right now to go third, fourth, fifth.
Okay,
That's not the plan.
Okay.
In fact, the current plan would be to take some of the things that we've done for consistency at 6 through 12, and probably move those sort of move that focus down to 3, 4, and 5, so that we've got more consistency in 3, 4, and 5. Right now, I think we've done a lot for grade standardization and holding the line in terms of rigor, 6 through 12. And I think this is actually a big step towards that in K2. And then the next and last thing, hopefully for the next decade, that we would want to change would be consistency in 3 through 5. So that's sort of the next piece.
Can I just say, it is a little alarming that there was no consistency, right? I mean, if teachers, individual teachers were making up their own, I mean, that's definitely concerning.
And there were pockets of common assessments, but but in the end, Roanoke County, and this is a good thing and it's a bad thing. Roanoke County has allowed teachers the autonomy to teach their kids with much more autonomy than some of the other divisions in the state. If you go to a division next door, they will tell you what to teach at this time of the day and say this, say that. It's that rigid, and they lose there's creativity lost in that.
So somewhere in the middle sounds
So,
better than
and I think that's where we're trying to
Right.
make sure we end up. We want to end up in that happy medium, but I think we probably have had too much autonomy for too long. We have to have some consistency.
Well, that's why the bar question, because, and then a combination of what we're talking about, because I think the beauty of a great educator is the one that you remember, right? Mm-hmm. And the way they got the information to you, processed out of you to get that grade. So I liken it almost to a NASCAR race. I give you this car, I give you this engine, now you make it what it can be, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that kid is similar. Let's give him he's the the tool or the car, and let's give him the tools that he needs to get the most we can get out of that student. So I like the idea. I just I think I guess to their point, I don't want to see us get away too much from the grades, because I think you need that at the end of the day to have an idea of where we're at and where we're going. But I do like the level of detail. That's really nice.
So can
The detail is fantastic, I agree. Yeah. But the autonomy, if it starts in third grade, are the third grade teachers being consistent with across the board, this is an A, that's a B, this is a C? And then
I would say there are common assessments in particularly math and reading. And, in terms of how they grade those, how they approach those, They've got quite a bit of flexibility. How they use those common assessments, they've got a lot of flexibility. So right now, is there can I say that the line is solid, from one school to the next to the next? There is some variation from teacher to teacher to teacher. And that is an area where we have pretty definite plans to come to you again and work on some additional changes there to improve that. That's something we wanted to work on this summer.
I would say that the consistency is tons better than when you and I were at that age in school, right?
Oh my
'Cause,
gosh.
That's why you got straight A's.
Well, that is not true.
Wow.
That is not true. However, that's also a reason why, frankly, we have SOL tests these days, right? Because, that is across Virginia and most states, right? That is the ultimate measure of, okay, is there these huge differences between how kids are being taught and what standards are being held to. So, that is the value of having these standardized SOL tests, even though you don't always appreciate them. But that does provide the consistency that did not exist before. So I think we're in a much
losing
better
that
place
autonomy.
than before.
Do we know of any other districts in the area that have gone through to K-5 with this progress report?
Quite a few on the eastern side of the state.
See, I
Most
went
of
to
those
SPG.
large divisions in Virginia go
Fairfax,
K-5 with the
Loudoun.
standards-based.
K-5.
Most of the large ones, your Virginia Beaches,
Virginia
your,
Beach,
your
Fairfax,
Henry-
Loudoun.
those folks.
I'd like to not have that discussion.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why you asked that question. I know.
Just curious.
Let's not go that way.
Arlington, yeah.
In terms of Southwest, I can't pull out, off the top of my head who has. I would say most have not in Southwest.
And some that have gone, like Virginia Beach, they brought it back down. Like they started, I think, doing it full load, K through 5, and have said, okay, this is too much. We're gonna go down. So I just have a couple thoughts that I wouldn't mind. I think you probably remember when this was brought forth through the whole K through 5 shebang. I was very hesitant and pushed back. I am all about rigor. I think we need to have rigor, accountability, set expectations. I'm not saying this model doesn't do that, but it does concern me. I'm very comfortable with K through 1. I'm not comfortable with 2, only because I know we are getting towards those higher learning intensive years. Like 3rd grade is a major year for learning for a lot of kids with the SOLs, and so it concerns me. I think we need to continue to set expectations high and have our students meet those expectations. When we lower expectations, my concern is, could this possibly be lowering expectations? Now, you say no, but, and I love how it's outlined. I think it's great. I think it gives lots of information, and I think that's what we need. So if there's a way to find a middle, and then you said that, some kids or students rather at some point then get this idea, this self-fulfilling prophecy that, oh, I'm a C student. Well, the same argument could be made, oh, I'm a 3 student, right? Or I'm an NP or, I'm an S. So I don't think you can put a system in place where that's not going to be something that happens. You're not going to get around the feelings part of grades, because there's feelings in everything, and we're humans, and that's what makes us wonderful and special. So anyway, I just wanted to insert that, and I've really appreciated all your work on this, and I think the committee, I'm sure they did a lot, and it looks like we're getting somewhere, but I don't want to get somewhere too fast and then have to go backwards.
Yeah, and I do like the consistency piece. We've had this discussion before on all grade levels. We've talked about the consistency piece. I know we've just spent a lot of time on this. The only other question I had was just, is this progress report or report card or whatever we're calling it, is it just K through 2, like 3 through 5?
Yes. Yeah,
I mean,
3
is it
through
not
5 right now is traditional as can be.
okay?
It's,
I mean,
yeah,
and I'm not
ABC.
even saying that. I guess I'm just thinking that this is still a lot of information for parents, and I mean, I think you could still do this for grade 3 through 5. I still want grades, but I'm just saying, like, I still feel like those are really formative years, right? We're talking about really young people all the way through 5th grade. So I still think you could use this, and parents are still getting a lot of information, but I still think you could attach a grade to it. I mean, that's kind of my thought.
Yeah, and I could not agree more with you on that, because the information is useful. The
It is
more
very
information you
useful,
have, the
for
better.
sure.
This is some
And that doesn't
information
change when they get to
that
fourth grade
I
or
feel
whatever.
like at a parent-teacher conference, these are things that would be discussed. And, you know, we
Right.
don't have 100% participation at parent-teacher conferences, but if your child comes forth and they have a C in their science, and the teacher then pulls out a whole nother rubric, if you will, on the breakdown, well, here's why. These are the concepts that they're really struggling in. And how does that going to translate to their learning later, and how can we help them now and meet them where they're at?
Right, and you're seeing it not at every 9 weeks. Like, you're not just seeing this at the end of the year when you're kind of beyond that point, right? So it's still, I think all of that information is super important, and you would be seeing it at every 9 weeks, and parents would get that information. And the students themselves can see that information too, right? I mean, as they get a little bit older, they can look at this and see what that means, you know?
It's energy. There's probably some really technical pros and cons that I don't know if this is the right time to get into that.
For sure, but.
Yeah, I mean, everything is more complex than it sounds, but yeah. So let me just let me just report on what the committee did, and then we can go to some policy stuff, some of which you may or may not want to do. None of that's going to be actionable today, certainly. All right, so in terms of gradebook recommendations, they basically, we've been through that. They've created new resources for teachers. Whatever we decide to do, these new resources exist, and they're good. And so the other thing, too, is these teachers work their tails off. You got to remember, a high school teacher might teach for, plan for 95 minutes at a time, 90 minutes at a time. Sometimes it's over and over. Sometimes they've got different preps. But these teachers are planning for an entire day every day. They like the resources. They like having a repository of resources that they can draw on so they can focus on the instruction and not making tests. So in terms of, we were just trying to do some housekeeping on the policy itself. So that could be, certainly something we talk about between now and the next meeting. But we wanted to make sure the grade bands were accurate to what was going on here. The other thing is that the report card descriptions didn't really match current research. The report card descriptions were basically norm-based rather than criterion-based. Norm-based would be like, C is average, you're doing an average, average for the group. When you're saying things like average, you're comparing kids to other kids. But in grading, you're not supposed to compare kids to other kids in the class, for example. You have proficiency. This is where the bar is. And we actually want all the kids to get to that bar. They're not all going to get to that bar, but we want all the kids to get to that bar. So we don't grade a kid. So we don't say, well, you all got to that bar, but, average is average. So you have to get, some kids have to get a C, some kids have to get an F. Because you're the last kid in the class, you get an F. That's kind of the way the wording was on the old system. So we just wanted to update the wording so it was based on, we call it criterion-based, meaning based on the standard itself. Are you meeting the standard or are you not meeting the standard? To what degree are you meeting the standard? So that would be what we're trying to update there with the AR. And the other thing, and this we could spend 4 or 5 hours on this if you'd like. But rounding, we were asking folks to, first off, if you don't round, you're a jerk. But I just want to throw that out. But in terms of rounding, we have strong opinions across the division on rounding. But what was happening here is that Synergy doesn't play well with all the rounding we want to do, like rounding at each 9 weeks and things. And we were running into situations where rounding at each 9 weeks was actually hurting kids. Because if you're at a 0.4, 0.4, 0.4, and you round down to down to down, you're actually taking points away from kids.
That's true.
And so we decided that the cleanest, most mathematical, fairest way is to, when we deal with rounding, is to round at the final course grade. And this would be for A to F courses. If you round at the final course grade, that's the only one that goes in the transcript. The final. Those 4 9 weeks, like especially for like high school, that doesn't go to colleges. Only the final grade goes to a college. So it's the cleanest thing, the fairest thing is to round 0.5 and above for your at the end. And that way we don't hurt kids. That way it mathematically is correct. Our math teachers will do dances and be happy, and because they're the ones who catch it. But that's we've been hearing from teachers for a while that's what they like. So we were hoping to make that change as well. So with that, any questions?
I think we've asked plenty of questions.
I will be happy to have some conversations, offline as well, because these things are sometimes require lots of different documents and, being able to kind of walk through a situation. But thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take a break for just a moment? Would
That's up to you,
okay?
Chair.
How quickly can
I would like to take a break.
Dr.
please.
Soltis get through the policies?
I know, especially if you're going to read
And
every
I've read
single
them
one
all.
of them to us.
You don't
I
need to read them all.
think-
Mine. You have a list of policies for you guys. Do you have any?
You can take me. You can take me.
Okay. Item 3.08, 2025-26 federal title grants, Ms. Kim Bradshaw and Mr. Mike Riley.
Madam Chair and board members, Dr. Nicely, Mr. Riley and I are bringing forward to you the federal grants for the 25-26 school year. I oversee Title I and Title III, so I'll be giving you the overview of those two grants, and Mr. Riley will share with you Title II and Title IV. Title I is our largest grant. This coming year, we will get a little over $1.7 million. This is an additional funding source of roughly $236,000 more than this current year. One of the things that you will see that's different with this coming year is we're adding in a middle school, Northside Middle School. So they are being rolled into our Title I grant as a Title I school, and they will have 2 teachers and 1 IA. This does not impact our other elementary schools. We currently have 8 elementary schools who are our Title I schools. So they will continue staffing as normal, and we're just rolling in Northside Middle. Title III will be a total of $60,856.63, and Title III covers the language instruction for English learners and immigrant children and youth, and that will continue as we have done in the past as well. Do you have any questions about Title I or Title III? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I cover Title II and Title IV. Title II really covers our teacher professional development. We use that when we provide, like several of you were at the administrative retreat, we used some Title II funds to help pay for the folks that came in and did some of the AI work with our teachers. We use Title II to work through our Opportunity Ready stuff. So we do that. We also use Title II funds to send teachers off to AP institutes so that we have teachers that can teach AP classes. We'll use the funds to help teachers get dually certified. You have to have 18 credit hours beyond a bachelor's degree in that area to teach at the college level, to be able to teach a dual enrolled class for Western here in our building. So we will pay teachers often to take classes, things like that. So that's wrapped up in that grant. And then Title IV is fairly new. It's been around for about 5 or 6 years. It wraps around safe and healthy students, well-rounded students, and then the use of technology. We use our safe and healthy funds in that for our PBIS initiative. Dr. McClung spends a lot of that money for me in making sure that we've got our matrices in place and that we're making sure that students understands our expectations. We do coaching. And then something I'm really proud of is we use that for our rounded funds, and you guys know this, to pay dual enrollment fees and AP test fees for our free reduced lunch students so that they can take those courses without any charge to them. So we use the grant for that. And we're looking this next year to do some professional development around AI. I don't know if you've heard of AI, but that's kind of a big thing that's coming down the pike now. So we're wanting to make sure that our staff and students are prepared for that. And we have a small amount of funding that we started a strings program this past year at Burlington Elementary School to allow those students to experience some things, some extracurriculars they normally wouldn't. So are there any questions on those? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That will, and those grants will go on the consent agenda because they do need to be approved by you guys and signed by the chair at the regular meeting in
Okay.
a couple weeks. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Item 3.09, annual policy updates, Dr. Jamie Soltis.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nicely, I will be brief, I promise. So I gave you guys 2 sheets. I didn't realize that Edie must have ran off for the other one. But if you'll look at the short, small sheet first, it says minor revisions or review. In board docs are 3 versions of every policy where you have the edited, the final, and a summary page. But I had some cliff notes here. The only ones on this page I want to talk, or on this group, is 2.13, electronic participation in meetings for remote locations. That is one that is required to be approved and adopted every year for you guys to be able to vote to decide if you're going to let somebody participate remotely. And then on, that's pretty much it on this one. The rest of them are just review dates, changes, or we decided not to make any changes, or it was like regular schedule for review for those. And then Ms. Peterson did an amazing job of trying to make all her policies consistent. She likes to have the cross-references in order, which is good. It's a good thing. All right, so now on the bigger one, I'll just go through most of the new ones. They're not new necessarily, could have been modified. These are due to, generally speaking, amendments to Virginia code. So like the first one, Roanoke County's ahead of this in a lot of ways because it says opioid antagonist. They put that into law, but in the reality of that, we've been doing that with naloxone. I think I said that right. Naloxone for years. We have more than one employee trained to administer it. That's just saying you have to. There is a little bit of new things, school crisis and emergency response plan on the next one. Pretty much it's the legal references and cross-references, but there were 5 main revisions. They're granting Ken the authority to meet on school grounds with the chief law enforcement officer. We've been doing that forever.
Apparently,
Anyway.
I didn't have that before, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because you got all these.
To review the safety plans. They are making everybody add to their crisis plans, and Tammy's working on this already. What would we do if we were closed again for a public health emergency? So I know that Tammy's already contacted Rhonda, looking at what some of the things are we did before. And basically, it's going to have to be, you have to transition quickly to online, provide transportation, provide food, that kind of stuff. In that one also, though, it says you have to have bleeding control kits in each school. We do, but this is actually contingent on General Assembly funding to provide for those bleed out kits. So they have to be with you at every drill now, if they have the funding to provide it for all schools, but we'll practice having it at every drill now. So that was the next one. We also have to now at least practice once a year sudden cardiac arrest drills. Facilities development, we didn't have this policy, but Todd and I talked. Is Todd still here? And our practice basically follows this anyway. It just puts in the policy that we will follow Virginia code to ensure that all new facilities that are remodeled or built new are designed to best implement the educational program. And it does have in there about all the HVAC systems and testing the air. That's in there as well. But Todd says we're already on that, but we put it in policy. You guys now have the ability to hire some potential people who've been convicted of crimes if they meet certain standards, and then not if they've done certain things. So they kind of restricted that. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. 5.01 is basically they've now allowed you to do a long-term sub for 180 days instead of just 90 days. But if you do a long-term sub for 180 days, you have to have a PD plan for that person that includes coaching and mentoring and a time scale to try to get the licensure. So that gives us a little flexibility. That does expire in 2027, but for now it gives us some flexibility if we can't find a certified sub for certain areas. This is a funny one. Staff weapons. They added that staff cannot have a weapon at school-sponsored activities as well. I guess somebody must have brought a gun to prom or something somewhere along the line. I don't know what happened. So then, because of the new opioid requirement, 5.38 employee change in assignment, that was updated to basically say it's kind of like the Good Samaritan law. If a school employee is trying to administer the opioid antagonist, naloxone or whatever, that they would not be held liable. And also, if somebody is found, but if somebody is put on probation, it's now treated as if it was a conviction and a finding of guilt. I already talked about the child abuse and neglect, not being able to hire certain people. Professional development, basically they're putting in limitations on what kinds of trainings we can do and how often. And the Department of Education is supposed to establish and maintain an index of required trainings, and it's got to be posted on their webpage by November 1st. We'll cross-reference it with what we do to make sure we're covering all those, which I'm sure we are. And then the other thing is there's new PD that you may offer as a board, which we already do according to Beth, for kids that work with autism on how to communicate and interact with students with autism. But the Board of Education is supposed to provide guidance on what that PD should entail. Moving on through, trying to get to the other stuff. So the programs for students with disabilities, there's a new parental notification of dual enrollment rights and obligations. Beth says we'll just work that into part of the IEP process, but the Department of Education is supposed to provide guidance on what that message is supposed to be. So a lot of this is contingent on them doing things. So now for one that we talked about that we adopted earlier in August, student use of personal mobile devices. The policy we're putting forward is that it be updated for elementary school students regarding student personal mobile devices. Elementary school students will be allowed to possess one on school property, provided that it's off, and I'll get to this in a second, but the way it's currently written, or in airplane mode and kept out of sight during the school day, school activities, and on school buses. So it wasn't currently restricted for school buses, so that's an addition. I did want to say, though, I heard the principals talking yesterday and got an email from them today. This is high school. So everything was going to remain the same for high school and middle school, but the high schools would like to, principals would like to say that we change the wording to require all cell phones to be out of sight and not on one's person for each of these grade levels. They just said that when it's on them and they feel it vibrating in their pocket, we're all guilty of this. We want to see what it is, and it ratcheted up the.
So the language would be not on your person?
Yeah, it would just say not on your person, meaning like stored in a book bag or personal bag.
Let me say, I know we're gonna get out of here, but that is, it's not, we can say that that's happening. It's not being administered.
Well, the feedback I get is it depends on your teacher. That's what
Absolutely.
the SEC was telling us.
Absolutely.
And that's something Dr. Nicely stressed at the retreat, is this is a non-negotiable. This has to be enforced.
Well, that's what I think we have to.
Yes. Because it's like, laws are written for people that are gonna follow them, right? So we have to address it when they're not. Moving on forward. Jeff Terry, school service providers' use of students' personal information. You know, there's always a big stress on personally identified information. And this is just, we added language, Jeff did. We had to clarify whether it was a school-issued device or a school technology provider. They added language that prohibits school technology providers from using or selling students' personal information, which I think we already were making sure they didn't do that, but just to put it in policy. And it put in language to allow us to monitor school-issued devices.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
That it's in policy now.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Student records, which I laugh with Sean because we have literally updated this every time I've done a policy update this year because they keep changing the rules. But the main revisions this time is there's a program called the Address Confidentiality Program that parents can sign up for. And if the parent signs up for it, they can let us know, and that's where the student's address or route number would not be part of their educational record. If they don't notify us and they're not part of that program, it is. And then also, when requested in writing by a foster parent, they can ask that we redact the address of a student's foster parent prior to providing the records to that student's parent, which I get. And then we updated the AR to make sure it matched those changes in policy. Administering medications to students. So the School Health Advisory Board looked at this with Charlene leading it, and they decided not to allow students to self-carry seizure medication. Since students may not be able to self-administer it, it would be harder to find the medication than if we had it on ourselves, or we had it, the nurse had it in storage. So we kept ours the same. So that's something we can look at in the future. I think Mike told me one time he was in charge of seizure medication for a young person. I'm not going there, buddy. I was stopping there. I learned a lot about seizure medication. Let's leave it at that.
So can you just clarify for our viewers? SHAB has decided to not allow students to self-carry.
Yes, they don't want them to self-carry because they feel like that the majority of the time if a kid's in a seizure, they can't self-administer. This is what the board said. So therefore, finding that medication is harder than if the person has it themselves. Because I know like my kid has an EpiPen.
Right.
He don't ever have it on him.
Right.
Even though he could, which is
So,
dumb.
To
Sorry,
go
I'm always
overboard
passionate.
on it, would it just not allow? I mean, maybe they would be required to provide instead of would not allow, because what if there is a kid who wants to have it on their person And so their friend might know, okay, this kid's allergic to, let's say, you use peanuts.
Right.
And then they go in his pocket and they can pull it out, rather than having to travel down to the nurse's station and pull epi. I'm just wondering if that language, so you can allow, but maybe you're required to provide the nurse's station, and you can also carry. I just,
Well, they are required to provide, aren't they? I mean,
So
just like with the
they would
EpiPen.
provide the seizure medication right now if you have a
Right, 'cause
diagnosed
the
seizure
nurse keeps
disorder.
that with her,
the
and you
nurse
have that
keeps it,
form
right.
that you
but
fill
why
out.
wouldn't you allow somebody to carry a life-saving medication?
Well, their argument is because.
But if you had
student may
both,
not
I
be
think
able
her
to
point
self-
I
is
would
you could
say
do
you should
both.
have,
Right.
be able
Right?
to have both.
Right. So I
Because if somebody could put their hand in your pocket and pull it out, it's like, if a drug,
But I do think you want the nurse to have access to those things so that you do know where it
that's
is.
the one thing that just because I had a child who was allergic to peanuts and nuts and everything under the sun, and if they had it on them, then someone could pull it out, and his friends, oh, it's in his pocket, or it's in his bag, and then, so.
So what I'll ask
I'm
Charlene to
curious
do
what
is
the
say, is
people
there a
who
way
have
to-
children with
Both.
seizures, how they would feel about it. Did they get information back from our epileptics in the?
I couldn't answer that question.
That would just be my only question, if you don't mind
No,
finding
I'll
out.
follow up with
Maybe,
Charlene.
I'm sure there's more than one epileptic.
Oh, I'm sure. So the other thing they did do with administering medications to students is the Student Health Advisory Board decided to limit over-the-counter medications that high school students can self-carry to ibuprofen, acetaminophen, so basically Advil, Tylenol, Tums, or Lactaid. So they kind of restricted what students are allowed to carry. So if y'all want to read over that one at the same time that I'm going to follow back up with the other, that's fine.
Does it literally say lactate?
Well, it's lactase enzyme, and she put lactate as the example.
Say that they can't carry it, is that what you're saying?
No, those are ones they can
They can
carry.
carry.
Limit it
If it's
to
like a brand
those
name, that's not
things
good.
Sorry, oh, yeah.
versus other.
Oh, you're limiting it to that, is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Okay, I got you.
Do you carry it with you?
Substance abuse program, this is really no change to the policy at all, other than this little blurb that was recommended, that the primary responsibility for helping students who are involved with substance abuse lies with the students and their parents. Nevertheless, Roanoke County School Board strives to provide a supportive school environment for students involved with substance use or abuse. The school board supports substance abuse programs, which vary according to individual needs. Included among these programs for persons who desire more information and for those who need help with intervention activities and programs. You support the efforts to help students during the school day, as well as to reinforce programs provided by other sources. To that end, individual school substance abuse programs may provide group experiences, individual counseling, and other programs. So that's where that came from. All right. I'm trying, Mr. Greenway. Threat assessment teams. So basically, there's just a new provision in the law that says the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, which would be the principal, immediately attempts to notify the student's parent or legal guardian and shall provide either in such initial attempt to notify through a separate communication that a kid is is a high risk of threat to himself or others. So Sean and I've talked, and Tammy've talked. The Board of Education is supposed to develop guidelines for materials that we are to provide those parents. So once we get those, we'll make sure that we incorporate them into a protocol within the policy. Does that make sense? We always notify anyway, but it's now codified. Teaching about drugs and alcohol, now it includes opioid overdose prevention, reversal information. So really nothing changed with the administration of naloxone. I was just putting that on there to show you guys. We changed the cross-reference since there's now a state code that requires it. Request for public record. So Tammy has to go through training at least once every 2 years, and the only thing they did here was no longer does it have to be through the FOIA council. It can be through an approved program via the FOIA council. Like the FOIA council could have approved a separate program. And then if you guys ever had your school board legal counsel be your FOIA officer, they would have to go through the FOIA training too. All right, Mikey and Kim might be able to speak on this better than I can, but there's an advanced or accelerated mathematics, and this is a new policy. I like putting Mike on the spot. So the new policy basically says it's a state requirement for students in grades 5 through 8 be notified annually about information regarding advanced math courses, and they're automatically enrolled, that's the key, in advanced math if they score in the top quartile in the state on their math SOL. Now, there are other options for parents to put the kid in advanced math, but there's also an option for parents to opt their kid out of advanced math if they didn't want to do it. And this is a little bit tough. It's a great idea, but in scheduling and staffing should be okay because it's still the same number of kids, and you might have to change course loads. But as far as it's late in the game before we get those tests and the scores back to be able to then we've already built schedules.
Is we'll get those scores back. We know what the kids scored, but we don't always know what the top quartile is going to be in the state until all the scores come in.
Right.
Usually July at the earliest.
So you can imagine trying to change schedules in July. So.
Yeah, it's not, and I'm glad you said that because it's not just us; it's across the state, the top quartile.
So you're gonna have to use your guesstimate. you're gonna have to guesstimate.
I think-
Or what could happen, quite honestly, is you go to tell a parent, we're going to put your kid in an advanced math class, but here's the schedule change that's going to require, and they may say, no, we don't want to do that, because they have the ability to opt out of it.
And I think, at least in my experience as being a building level principal, our schools do a pretty good job of trying to challenge those kids to go into the level. I don't either. I don't either. All right, student athlete extreme heat and safety protection. This is a brand new policy that was created by code. And so basically this policy, you have to have developed guidelines for modifying and canceling sporting events and practices based on heat indexes. We actually already had some of this. What's it called? The bulb heat. It's just like this whole matrix that's in the policy that shows you if it's so hot and it's this humid, you're limited to X number of practice hours outside, those kinds of things. Chuck updated communication because it was in the review cycle. I'm trying to move on down. Oh, one thing that we're doing on 6.42 EAR, Internet Safety and Digital Citizenship, I give kudos to the technology department because they're being proactive. So desire to have a response plan, I should say plan, I don't know what polling means. Plan for cybersecurity incidents. So Jeff and them are already working on an incident response plan because having worked with all these other divisions that have been attacked, we want to know what we need to do and who's responsible for what instead of scrambling once that's happened. So kudos to Jeff and his team.
That's smart.
Yeah. Staff leaves and absences, Mr. Bradshaw put in, or somebody put in, was it you or Bradshaw, Susan? Was it Bradshaw put in the bereavement part of the policy? Okay, sorry, Mr. Bradshaw. And then you got several that Susan is reviewing policies as we go along. And I don't know if she wants to summarize it, but basically we're deleting an activity fund manual and a grant procedures manual and incorporating that information. So it's a one-stop shop, am I right, into the financial accounting and reporting manual, which is, yep, she's working on that. All right. Do you want to talk about the small purchasing changes you made? Or do you want me to do it? So basically, if you made sure you updated the language to agree with the changes, but however, you made sure the thresholds agreed with the county's adopted spending levels. And then that's it. Whew. I tried to do it as quick as I could. I'm sweating.
You want to give a report on that?
Oh, there was one other policy, thank you. There was one other policy, an admin reg that we've been reviewing and you know, we put out the survey for policy 3.16, bullying and harassment, and 3.16 AR. And basically from the survey analysis, there were 4 main themes that emerged from the feedback. They are accountability and consequences, communication, enforcement, and counseling. Additionally, many respondents emphasized the need for parental involvement in monitoring cell phones and social media. Furthermore, respondents emphasized the need for clear and consistent consequences for bullying behavior, communication with parents, consistent enforcement of current policies, and increased access to counseling for both the victim and the offender. So after reviewing the policy, the current policy we have, and the admin reg, we believe the current policy and the admin reg are strong and they do not need to be updated. And in reviewing with our staff, administrators, and counselors, we've determined the implementation of the policy is also strong. However, we're going to continue to keep this in the forefront to make sure that we remain vigilant. So I just wanted to fill you guys in on that.
That's good.
Cell phones are an issue with bullying.
All right.
They are.
Is that everything?
Yes, ma'am, and I would just recommend to move all of these to consent, except maybe the School Health Advisory Board
I
one
just
that
kind
I'll,
of, yeah, I don't see the downside. I
get
just kind of
clar-
curious, maybe they know something that I
and I'll
don't
get
know.
clarification.
Okay.
Let you all know that.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Hope not.
All right.
Are you guys good moving this to consent?
Yes.
And you're good with me modifying the cell phone policy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. All right. Meeting adjourned.